Javier, I said that I thought going into Monday Night Raw, WWE should, as a way to honor the fans who they disrespected with that nonsense last Friday, should have just pretended the Pat McAfee segment didn't happen. Fans would agree to give him a mulligan. Somebody got involved in creative who doesn't understand the fans or pro wrestling, and people don't want to see fantasy heel manager camp from some ESPN guy who's this fanboy interloper who gets to live out a fantasy of being a heel going into WrestleMania. But they gave Punk some mic time to rebut him since he disparaged WrestleMania ticket sales. And then tonight, they kept going with it. I mean, I'm obviously not shocked. I'm somewhat facetious in saying, I'm not facetious in saying I wish they would have dropped it, but I'm facetious in saying there was any chance that they would have. I mean, my take on this is that what we saw with Pat McAfee tonight is what dying wrestling companies do with really bad bookers who are desperate and have lost any, if they had any faith or any knowledge in how to tell a pro wrestling story, they go for the low-hanging fruit, online obsessed. Let's pretend the people online who are complaining are the entire audience, and in WWE's case, leaving out 80% of them who don't want to hear this dribble. And it's embarrassing for WWE. I mean, to be doing this, it's genuinely, I think, humiliating for people involved in WWE who have taken it to the level that it's reached, to have this be forced upon them in WrestleMania season. And if anybody is cursed, it's Cody, because he's always around when people meddle and make things, take things in a direction that I think is counterproductive for the business. I'm genuinely, like, as just a this lifelong wrestling fan who's watched this product, embarrassed that this is on television. I mean, Pat's not awful in playing the role, but what he said last week was, I want to use a word that he would use and think he was cool, that starts with an R. But he's just like last week, as Todd Martin broke down on The Fix and I ranted about and wrote about last week, everything he said just makes no sense. It's not grounded in any reality outside of the ring or in canon. And tonight was counterproductive and hack. And I know. I mean, I'm embarrassed for WWE that Ari Emanuel apparently and Pat McAfee think that this is good. I think it's transparent to anybody who actually truly understands the wrestling industry how hack and off course and basically reminiscent that was of dying companies with terrible bookers that we've seen in the past, going to calling the fans marks and IWC and all that. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of amazed that there wasn't like some massive walkout by people in WWE over this nonsense. Yeah, I'm down on it. I think it's awful. Javier, where are you on it?
I'm gonna take you on a journey, Wade.
Yeah,
because I heard all. I actually did not watch last week's SmackDown or this week's Raw until before the show, so I saw it all like in one sitting today.
Yeah.
But I had heard originally. I did hear the scuttlebutt coming through social media of like people. Oh, this is going on, and then obviously I normally won't listen to your shows until I've seen the show, so I'm not But in this case, because I heard all the stuff and I could listen to a podcast from at work, I heard the stuff that you guys were saying, so I was braced for it. Now, let me just set it, because I'm coming at it from a bunch of different directions. I think that, like, if someone serves you a pizza and there's a turd in the middle of it, like, you can say, oh, well, there's some salvageable stuff around there, but do you really want it? I mean, do you even want another pizza from the same kitchen? So that's overall what I think it was bad, but I was expecting basically Vince Russo to come out and start talking. I didn't see anything in what he did that was singularly horrible, but it was just so many little dumb stuff, counterproductive stuff, damaging stuff. Nothing, again, not one thing was bad, but it was like it was a whole bunch of stuff that just multiplied. and became like really dumb. So last time I was here doing the podcast with you, since then I wrote down what WWE has taught me of the situation of WWE right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so to be clear, we currently have a champion that is boring and can't draw. We have another champion who is old and essentially emasculated. We have a challenger who is safe and manufactured and plastic. We have an ownership. We have a company that's down in the ratings and cannot sell out WrestleMania, their biggest show of the year. And we have an ownership group who is greedy and self-serving. This is what they've worked into the storylines in WWE right now. For no reason. I can't think of an actual reason why they would do any of that stuff. You know, I haven't been talking too much Raw and the Punk stuff with Roman Reigns since I haven't been doing those post shows. But like, I'm kind of between you and Todd, where I'm not as like hard on the I wasn't until this Monday. I wasn't as hard until on that until now. It grabbed some of the same stuff from this. So what it seems like to me is that we're watching some sort of power play, and it's playing out in front of our screens. Mm-hmm. So on the plus side, just listening to the audience, it doesn't seem that the paying audience that's sitting there really cares. It might be one of those things where it's like, Todd mentions a lot that there's no investment in it, which is why you get people cheering for Cody, but then they're 3 seconds later they're cheering for Randy Orton to hit the RKO. So people are not invested in that way, and I think that is a good thing. I think it really only upsets the like you who are invested in in a more critical way. So that's a blessing for them in that respect. So as far as what we saw today, I think that Cody pretty much picked everything up and put it on his shoulders, and I think the promo that he cut pretty much led everything that you've been talking about. He basically mentioned that he's what's the expression that he used? Play wrestler. Same idea that and he underscored that. I think that they're basically putting it more on the right track. I think that they can get Pat McAfee to like a Dan Lambert kind of character. So I think that's like the best case solution with and kind of the direction I think they're going to try to pivot into. But you didn't have to go through all this stuff to get there. Because like I'm like, okay, Wade's going to ask me, how do you salvage this? And I'm like, that was like, I was me all this morning. I was like, okay, so how can what could, I mean, if this all turns out to be all like really The Rock in the power play, and this is basically the setup, The Rock costs helps Randy, and it's really The Rock behind everything, and this is just to set up The Rock for next year's WrestleMania. Even then, that's what I was my opening, part of the pizza with the turd on it. Like, okay, that part's salvageable, but you didn't have to do that other part to get to that. So that's where I'm at with that. I can't go too hard on Pat for one specific reason, because I these are all my notes from Monday Night Raw of Punk's promo. Mm-hmm. And this ended up being Pat McAfee's script. Pretty much everything he was talking about in terms of like, the Saudi Arabia stuff and all the stuff, because the promo, because I kind of got upset that a lot of people are like, oh, it's the new Bob promo and Punk is fixing everything. But then I listened to the promo, and then like 2 seconds later you have, because he's saying, oh, this is the stuff that I'm not allowed to say this. And then 2 seconds later, Michael Cole is like, well, yeah, Punk is so controversial. This is such a controversial statement. And I'm like, okay, so the company just signed off on it. Some of the stuff I didn't mention that I didn't write down was the fact that, he is sitting, selling his merch. He's sitting and all that stuff. So I that's part of the compounding issue. Like, if you take me back to last week and if I were on last week, I'd say, yeah, okay, the stuff that Pat McAfee did, you should have just left it alone. I think that the Cody response where he came back in later. I've read that maybe they threw him in there just to because because of the scuttlebutt online. So I think that was the one that was like the least amount of damaging, except for the fact that he had to bring in Emmanuel and some of that stuff. Don't talk about what's happening behind. Don't talk about the corporate stuff. And then I think it was compounded worse by Punk, in where he's bringing the part where he was talking about Roman Reigns was fine, but then once he started working in some of the other stuff, and like one of the things that got a lot of buzz was when he talked about Roman Reigns eating dog food because of an old man. I do not remember Vince McMahon feeding Roman Reigns dog food. That doesn't exist in my memory because it was Baron Corbin in part of the story. So Punk is talking about something. He's talking about the booking of Roman Reigns, not talking about the actual in-ring stuff. So I think it got very muddied there because now he's talking about booking stuff, and that's one of the things I remember from WCW, where the back and forth between wrestlers were like, "Oh, you're booked badly." I think that's damaging too. So I think altogether, if I were someone who knew who I was doing in WWE, I'd want these last 3 shows back, and a do-over, because it's just
yeah.
Again, it's not a singular thing. It's not just like the one thing that's like, man, this is just horrible. They did this. It was just stuff compounding on top of each other over and over. And I think that they lost the plot altogether. So, I think Cody's promo is like, okay, let's just go with what we got, and let's hate McAfee. Let's just push all this heat onto McAfee and because they didn't really touch the points that much today. They didn't talk about like not selling tickets outside of like, I love the fact that they used the story to sell tickets at 25% discount.
Yeah.
That is just like, wow, blow my mind. So people can't complain. It's part of the storyline. It's just an amazing. That's like the most carny thing ever. But yeah, yeah.
So, when you say it's not just one bad thing, like right after last week's segment, I wrote in my report at PWTorch.com. Hope everybody's checking out my TV reports live during the show. Are there words available to describe how awful that was on so many levels? That's the thing. There's not just one thing wrong with this. This is a just splattering of the stuff that Pat likes to talk about all over a wall, that people in WWE who are very proud of the work that they have done have built over the years, especially since Vince McMahon left. It hasn't been perfect, but even if you take out the WrestleMania season meddling from top executives and The Rock and his Brangowitz circle and all that, and the faction warfare going on behind the scenes, it's been imperfect even without that. But they're proud, and they're, as Cody said last week, hey, we've been doing record business, and these 3 wrestlers have been part of matches with record business, and they were all against me. So he got his sort of his rebuttal in last week. The problem is we should not start keeping score of whether Pat McAfee made Punk look worse than Punk made McAfee look, or then Punk made Roman look, or that Roman made Punk look. I'm on the record. I think what Punk and Roman have been doing is ill-advised. Didn't think it was awful. Thought the first segment was good. I think it should have shifted from there into something that was more grounded in, I want to prove I'm better than you in the ring and win or keep my title. And I think there's plenty to pull from there. There's a rich history in pro wrestling of that actually selling tickets when you focus on that and you believe that's enough. But that precedent is not justification for what Pat is doing, and they're in separate categories. Punk and Roman were trash talking one another. They were leaving some things out. Roman didn't say, Punk, you say you're the best in the world, but when it's a real fight, you got schooled in UFC. Because that's demeaning your opponent in a way where who are you beating then? Years earlier, Punk, when he was in his closer to his physical prime, still, a few years past it, did not tear it up in UFC. there's things Punk could have said about Roman, and that have been left out. But they were, I think it's a lame flame war, like just people arguing on a message board, and you just stop reading because it's just too much and it's self-indulgent, and it's not my thing, and it's not my thing. I just don't think it's what wrestling fans really want to watch. It's two wrestlers they like tear each other apart. What's different with McAfee, and part of it you can't not frame it as this is needless flailing over a really successful show that is not giving WWE the breaking points they need because gluttonously greedy bean counter executives who don't understand the businesses that they're running as much as they fancy themselves understanding jacked up ticket prices and went to the same market twice. They didn't go to the same market because there was fan demand. They went to the same market because they got paid to by the municipality. Then they jacked up ticket prices because it hadn't backfired yet. And now they're looking around for someone to blame. And so deep down, there is something going, well, we got to blame Cody. We got to blame Paul Levesque. It's not the ticket prices. It's your job to justify the prices we're charging. So you have that element that creates at the foundation sort of a corrupt intent. It is not, we think this is best for business. It is, this show needs a spark, and desperate times call for desperate measures. So you have that aspect, which is a cover story for their own mistake that they don't want to admit to. Went to the same market twice because they paid us. It's not about the fans. It was about money. It's too many decisions TKO is making. I said this about Vince McMahon. There's a lot we can say about Vince McMahon, and he should not be welcomed back in company. I'm shame on the wrestlers who went to his birthday party with the evidence that's out there of what he did, even if you exclude anything that isn't proven or disputed. What is not disputed and available in text messages and out there in the public realm otherwise is enough where you should just be like, I can't associate with you in public, and and any top executive should just be like, they should be saying outright, for the record, the speculation that Vince is in someone's ear, because Pat's promo last week was felt like the ranting of a madman who's bitter and losing it because he's not involved in the product and he sees an opportunity to seize it by ranting to some executive who then comes up with the idea to have Pat reiterate and regurgitate some of that stuff. That's what, I'm not saying that happened, but that's what it came across as, and that's pathetic and sad that you're putting on national TV a couple weeks before Mania but you have the motivation for doing this is not to serve the fans. It's a cover for their own mistakes that they won't admit to or they're in denial about. So you have that aspect of it. So you can critique it and go, well, that shows itself. But there, like what McAfee said last week, and I'm not going to repeat all of it. You can listen to the podcast a week ago. I spent 20 minutes ranting about it and breaking it down. This week's Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter cover story. Headline, Pat McAfee says WWE is now absolute shit. I break down paragraph by paragraph what made no sense. And it made no sense in many ways. You give him credit for variety, Javier. Pat McAfee was counterproductive and nonsensical in creative ways that were not consistent. It was all over the place. So there's all kinds of things that made no sense. But it was crude, it was hack, and it was presented as if it was cutting edge because nobody ever thought to do something so cutting edge and breaking the fourth wall. And it's hack. It's undisciplined. I mean, I often say, like a lot of booking decisions are come across as a fourth grader going, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And the fact is a lot of fourth graders have creative ideas that adults in the room go, that's not a good idea. You'll know when you get older. You'll understand it. So you also have this issue. Not only is the motivation wrong, but because the motivation's wrong, and it's not there to serve the fans, it's there to serve, as you said, Javier, an agenda about corporate factions in battle, but sort of a passive aggressive way that's manifesting as something more than that. You also just have Pat McAfee freestyling it in a way that shows he is a product of being a fan who's online and not a product of somebody who understands how the business actually draws money and how there's a certain lore, there's a certain structure to the lore that you have to adhere to, or it all falls apart. When McAfee was out there tonight, there were just a lot of blank stares. I mean, the crowd was like, Pat, go home, because fans have been conditioned to It's a communal experience. You chant the cool chant. Lil Yachty's bringing the what chant back. Yay. But they're sort of blank looks because the WWE fan base is buying tickets to see the storylines WWE tells in the canon with the logic and the structure that they typically tell them. Not always perfectly. We critique it sometimes here, believe it or not. You know that if you listen and watch us. But they're like, what is he talking about? That's another problem. So much of what he's talking about doesn't make sense. So you have that aspect. But you also have the aspect that he's saying things that are ringing true about CM Punk that build on Roman Reigns, who has basically called him old, brittle hypocrite. Well, Drew called him brittle and Roman called him an old hypocrite. Now Pat's building on that by rebutting a promo from Monday, and we should not get sidetracked on deciding who scored more points in that battle. There are things CM Punk is vulnerable with. That is beside the effing point, everybody. That is irrelevant. But it's not to Pat, because Pat used precious time on a national cable show a week before WrestleMania to score points rather than have the humility and the respect for what he did, and the good points have been made outside of canon about what he did last week. He did not have the grace, the wisdom, the respect, or the maturity to understand he had what Punk said coming on Monday, even if there were holes in the argument. He came back at him, and he came back at him in a way that could have done pretty serious damage to him. And that damage is going to affect how fans look at CM Punk going forward, because this is a big angle with a big platform, and he made some good points. There's good points you can make about people, but the job of a heel, and this is generically speaking, is to not get yourself over with good points. The job of a heel is, in the end, to have the babyface be more, if they're at your level, not if they're beneath you, then you're just using them to move up the ladder. But the job of heel is to leave the babyface better off at the end of the feud than going in. Pat McAfee doesn't get any of that. Pat thinks this is some flame war. It's some battle on Twitter or some battle on some message board to score more points so that the people on his side behind the scenes are high-fiving him, and the people who don't like Punk for whatever reason, and there's lots of reasons you can be against Punk, are like, hey, way to tell him, Pat. They've lost sight of what counts here. The stakes are high. This was immaturity and hack, counterproductive material where a platform has been given to an amateur interloper who doesn't understand the business, who isn't wanted there by the locker room, who was wearing out his welcome on his second stint on color commentary because he wasn't following the product. He became a caricature of what was, I think, a good first run for him. And now they've given him a live mic, and he is tearing apart the Night 2 main event. He's tearing apart WrestleMania. He is saying it's not worth spending your money on. It would be embarrassing to be there. I mean, like, basically in so many words saying that. And that's not even getting into a whole other thing, which is that just sad, pathetic, heel negotiating 25% off of night one, because who would want to see this and pay full price? I mean, just doubling down on that nonsense. So, I mean, I could go on. I just talked for 10 straight minutes. I mean, I'm embarrassed for the people who take pride in what they do in WWE, and the people who are greenlighting this, authorizing it, and think it's good are going to find out. I mean, it's not going to work. It's not working. Fans picking up on Pat Go Home is, kind of a shoot comment. They're not reacting to the story the way they should. But even if they do in another town, or even if you disagree with my framing of it and you think they did, that in and of itself isn't enough to even slightly justify what they're doing. I mean, and Cody did as good of a job as you could expect somebody to do in these awkward circumstances to try to rein it back into canon, make some good points, not get rattled by this just fool that Pat McAfee is, and not lower yourself to feel like, I mean, Cody's lowering himself to even rebut this nonsense, but he kind of has to because the higher ups are big fans of Pat McAfee because he talks to athletes and he's part of ESPN. Woo! The marks are the top executives at TKO authorizing this. The mark is Pat McAfee, who's getting off on this fantasy camp nonsense of I get to be heel manager and I get to break the fourth wall and I get to do my own show, pipe bomb promo and I get free reign because of who I am and who I know. And the fact that certain higher ups are enjoying me tearing apart the rival faction in this weird civil war on the brink of maybe the second most successful ticket revenue weekend in pro wrestling history. It's just they charge so much, they don't need a full building to accomplish that. But they're selling a lot of tickets. And people who've only paid attention for the last few years where it's sellouts and quick sellouts don't understand how special even empty seats are when you look at how many seats are full and how much money is being made. So, I mean, I'm not stunned by this because I've seen a lot in pro wrestling, but I it is disrespectful and I feel bad for people who take pride and understand why this is so bad, who are working hard and have worked hard to get them to the stage. This is desperate, misguided, counterproductive flailing by hacks and marks who do not understand the business. Javier, quick thoughts from you, then we will introduce the show and we'll throw some reader comments up and then cover more and react to those.
What Pat McAfee said sounded like it was written by two writers. And I would put money. I wouldn't bet the house.
Yeah.
But I would put money that Gewurz wrote the CM Punk stuff after what Punk said about The Rock on the show. Because that felt there were really good lines. There were really bloody lines. Yep. I'm like thinking like, what, you know, where's Punk at? This we might be seeing another AEW scenario here. You know, so it felt like that was written by you know, that camp, while the rest of the stuff that he talked about, that was, you know, more about the Cody stuff, that was more like the actual writing team trying to get things back on the rails from where they had been, because they really just glossed over the stuff at that point, with the exception of selling the tickets. You know, they really glossed that stuff over. But yeah, I mean, go ahead, because I've got some other stuff that's tangential.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So let's just pause and introduce ourselves here. We're about halfway into the show. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show on Friday, April 10th, 2026. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the long-running Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter. Here's this week's cover story. Paper copies available if you want to go analog, like a lot of people are doing, and break away from screens for a little bit and settle in. Exclusive content every week. Greg Parks has a full-page column looking at what Chris Jericho can do in AEW, what is left for him to do. My cover story on the Pat McAfee situation, as you saw, is there too, with a breakdown of and kind of laying out what was so wrong about what happened last Friday. You can also get a digital or all text version of that with an online full VIP membership. PWTorch.com/GoVIP is the place to go to find out details on VIP membership. That includes, by the way, commercial-free versions of the podcasts that we put out for free on YouTube and on our podcast network, and then VIP exclusive shows also. Whole array of VIP exclusive shows throughout the week, all compatible with Apple Podcasts. They're compatible with Spotify through Patreon, and they're compatible with Patreon then, of course, also, and iOS and Android apps, or you can just stream them directly from our ad-free VIP website, pwtorch.com/govip. That includes, by the way, our entire library of covering every WrestleMania from WrestleMania 1 through 41, with either retro look-back podcasts or, in the case of more than 20, same-night roundtable reviews of the show. So if you have shows you want to go back and see what we had to say the night of the show, they're all available on demand. We also have a WrestleMania podcast history feed where you can subscribe to the RSS feed as a VIP member and have all the WrestleMania shows available on an RSS feed, just like a regular podcast. So check it out. It's a great time to go VIP, pwtorch.com/govip. But we're here talking SmackDown tonight on the Wade Keller Post Show. We are live on YouTube, on the PW Torch YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like this show and leave comments and get a discussion going. That helps with the algorithm, and it's just a way to give some feedback to us. If you're on the podcast side of things, you can obviously give us a 5-star rating in whatever podcast app you are using. Thank you, however you listen to us, for supporting us. If you are discovering us on YouTube and you're not on the podcast side, just search Wade Keller on your podcast app. And that'll bring up the red logo and the blue logo. Both have an array of podcasts. The red logo show features our shows that originally live stream on YouTube, and then they become a podcast. And we have other shows on there, including flashbacks that are not on YouTube. And then the blue logo show features our weekly flagship episode. This week, we talked a lot about the Pat McAfee segment. And Chris Lanzell was a first-time co-host on the flagship, and I really enjoyed my conversation with him. But we talked a lot of other topics, AEW, New Japan, and more. So search Wade Keller, subscribe to that. That also includes interviews, pay-per-view previews, and more. We did move the AEW pay-per-view preview to the PWTorch Daily Cast feed this week. Greg Canner did a preview of the pay-per-view, and then we have, and this is going up tonight, we have the Tony Khan Media Q&A also on the PWTorch Daily Cast feed. To subscribe to that for free, search PWTorch in your podcast app, and you can subscribe for free. That includes a different show each day of the week, covering different topics, and it also includes Wrestling Night in America, which this Sunday night will feature our post-AEW Dynasty live post show, which will be live on the PWTorch YouTube channel and then distributed as an audio-only podcast. Afterwards, Greg Park's hosting that. So join us then. But you're here to listen to us talk SmackDown, and you can join in. We'll be reading some comments in the chat momentarily. If you're watching us live on YouTube, join in the chat. If you can't watch us live, you're invited to email us, wadekellerpostshow@gmail.com. And you can also be an audio call or video caller, or turn your camera off and be audio only if you prefer. The link to that is in my TV report at PWTorch. My co-host is Javier Machado. He contributes pay-per-view previews and has been a regular contributor to the Torch for many years and joins me on a regular basis here as co-host. Javier, welcome. Good to have you here to break down a very strange WrestleMania season. I had my critiques of some decisions that they had been making, but things really took a strange turn in these last 8 days. Last 8 days.
I mean, one of the things that's proving me right when we were speculating what the other main event was going to be, that I knew that they were going to go with the Randy as the heel. I was just hoping that they wouldn't go the way they did, as hard as they did, and they sure did, and we're on that track now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I'll just throw up a comment here. We'll do some chat comments, Javier, and on this in particular, and then we'll get to the weird Sami, Zayn, Trick Williams situation, what they did with Rhea and Jade, Danhausen's in-ring SmackDown debut, and more. We'll kind of look at the WrestleMania build overall a week out. Darrell.
Singles debut, because he was in a tag team match last week.
Oh, okay. Singles debut on SmackDown. Thank you. Darrell says, what TKO is doing with WWE, they would never pull with UFC at all. UFC... in breaking record numbers, they haven't done that in a few years. Right now, WWE has caught up and pulled even with UFC. So, I mean, yeah, there is a certain sense of there's creative freedom that they think they have with the pro wrestling realm that they just don't have in UFC. I mean, I just don't think they would dare do this. I think they see pro wrestling as sort of this playground to have fun and innovate, or whatever. And yeah, I think there's something to that. Javier, there's a bunch of comments. We'll throw some up as you talk here, and I'll reference them. That celebrities in general these celebrities in general, people aren't super excited about. We have the Jelly Roll, who's, I mean, he's a celebrity, but not, beloved. But I think he's conducting himself quite well. And then especially, I mean, there's Little Yachty and stuff. But obviously, Pat McAfee is the biggest one at this point. As Paul Driver Pete said, it's Celebrity Day Camp. Do you think ultimately we will see a rejection just by some fans based on how much McAfee and Jelly Roll are getting involved? And it's obvious they're heading towards a mixed tag match, the way they've been setting it up, probably at Backlash, with Jelly Roll and Cody against Orton and McAfee. News coming out of tonight's show, if Orton doesn't win, then McAfee will go away forever. So they've kind of told fans you're going to see a title change, or we're going to screw around with that stipulation somehow. or they are going to send Pat away, and we're not going to get the tag match. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we get the tag match. I think they want to give Randy Orton what would be his 15th. And I do think The Rock is going to be involved. I think it's going to be a situation where The Rock is going to come out and do it because he did the 3, the 2. They're going to use the 1 to maybe get a WrestleMania next year. I'm pretty confident that at this point you wouldn't do it otherwise. I mean, I don't see the only thing is they get enough cold feet where we don't want any more Pat McAfee. We're going to nip this in the bud early. So, but I do think it's more likely that because I do want to talk about this now. No, it'll probably derail too much. But Cody needs a Dragon to fight. So I think him on the chase to like SummerSlam and then work something up on The Rock. I think probably the direction.
So yeah, let's stay on this topic for now because that is going to take us away from what I want to do, which is read some comments from the chat. I've thrown them on the screen for YouTube viewers. I want to read them and we can respond to them now. And also I want to get into a little bit more the points Pat McAfee made about CM Punk too. I think that's a topic that deserves its own space and focus also.
I won't be unbiased on that one.
Saiti says, neither of us miss anything. They're dragging out heat between two guys who will likely never have a match. Maybe they will. But so that's a tease of the McAfee and Punk back and forth. So we'll cover that in a bit. Tilt 0102. All right. These fonts, sometimes numbers and letters are hard to tell. Not a fan of Pat McAfee or what he's doing. However, he had me thinking on CM Punk. He's right. The character and the person. I keep doing this. I don't want to put those up yet. Okay. Brian Bayless says the McAfee Cody segment was dreadful and try hard. Nearly 25 minutes long with the tease reveal being a sponsored ticket discount. Live crowd's enthusiasm was about gone for the rest of the show. Do you agree with my framing, Javier? Because, I mean, we can see it differently, and I wouldn't say it's totally subjective, but I didn't think the crowd was super into the story being told. I think they wanted to boo a heel. They were there. They paid their money. They want to chant, go home, Pat. They want to cheer Cody. But do you agree with me that it seemed like there were a lot of blank faces or just wasn't the insults weren't landing, and it felt like people in their own way were kind of trying to process and figure out what they were listening to?
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. That I think that he's making good points on CM Punk. People are like processing this when he's talking about and then he uses that to talk about the ticket discounts. And what my question was like, okay, well, they're obviously placing Pat McAfee as the heel. You're not meant to. And I'm ignoring whether, because I know sometimes through the heels they try to send a message. I'm ignoring that part of it. But you in general should not be getting, maybe he has a point, sort of, but not really. But he's the heel. It's not the messenger. You're not meant to take everything that the messenger says literally. So like I didn't take the whole. Maybe someone does have a problem with 40-minute match, Iron Man matches, higher on up. But the fans don't. The fans are fine with that. Okay, so some fans, the McAfee type fan might, but that's it lands false. That part of it lands false. Mm-hmm. But then he's also saying stuff that lands true, and then he's giving a discount. And like, okay, yeah, sometimes the bad guy will do stuff like that to try to win fans over. Doesn't seem like that's a story they're trying to tell. My question is like, because it was Ram who's sponsoring the tickets, like. You're saying that this Ram made a deal with the guy who's the heel in the storyline. How is this good marketing for your product? Yeah. Nobody, I think, in the company really asked that question, and I think it's because they just think that this is just this is just play acting, and that's what it kind of underscores. It. We're watching a play. This is Disney on Ice, and that's kind of been like the issue with
Disney on Ice is not this convoluted.
Well, no. In reference that you're watching a show as opposed to any level of reality. But
that doesn't mean there's no rules. It doesn't mean that there's not a lore to that kind of show and a respect for the parameters of how you tell stories within that. Like this idea that pro wrestling is a free for all and we shouldn't adhere to respecting our audience and telling stories and having a constitution of the characters that guides them in a way that makes sense week to week. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, Javier. I'm just saying there's people who think pro wrestling is a free for all. They don't understand the fact that it presents itself as a sport, but it's a simulation of a sport, and that you can have anybody say anything and decide the outcomes doesn't take the responsibility away from the writers / bookers to tell a coherent story that gives the fans a good experience. And that's not what this is. And back to my question to you, I want to talk about the Ram thing later. Do you think the fans are into this or not? Do you think that do you think they can't wait to boo Pat McAfee and see what he's got coming? Because it does get into what you're saying, which is he's saying things that are sort of either beside the point or not things heel should say, or they're not things that are helping sell the match. It's just venting as a vessel for higher-ups or trying to please the higher-ups that he oddly is accusing Cody of being a suck-up with Triple H and some crude portrayals of it.
Well, you're going to have your bellwether fans, that are who are booing him because they legit want him gone, right? You got your fans that don't know what's going on. It's just this guy being, a prick, insulting.
I'm supposed to boo him, so I boo him.
Exactly, yep. And then they follow along with those. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. Is I think that is, it's not good for if you want to be engagement and be engaged with the product. Like no one but other little kids are going to be. That's why I brought up Disney on Ice. The adult that go see Disney on Ice is not going to be engaged with the drama. I know they're retelling the Cinderella, whatever story they're telling, or Little Mermaid, but you're not really engaged because you're just watching the dance, and you're watching the stuff. And I think that level of disconnect, it just widens that gap. That Todd hits this often. It just widens that gap even further. So you get the fight. The this is awesome when something cool happens, and RKO him or break his arm, and you get that level of you're not really engaged in stuff. Which is why personally I held the Cody's thing, because Cody got emotional. He tried to connect with the fans, mentioning the fans are the customers. They're not marks. They're not customers. They, and pointing out the kid in the audience. A lot of psychological tricks like that to basically make it more personal and get people more engaged. And I think that towards the end of that, he really did start turning the crowd into booing him. Go home, Pat, and which is why I brought up what's his name, Dan Lambert. So you could end up with a Dan Lambert situation,
which isn't good.
Well, I mean, he got people wanted to kill him on the shows.
Yeah, but it's not good in that AEW is a different product than WWE.
Yeah, I mean, but we'll see how they could. I'm just saying that they could make something out of it. So
I just want to be sure we're not championing Dan Lambert as this angle of the year successful character. It was also hack, but it was hack in a way that landed better with AEW fans because a higher percentage of them, because the crowds are smaller and they are fans who are more engaged and internationally aware and into work rate, they were able to understand what Lambert was saying. I still think it was hack, counterproductive, low-hanging fruit, doesn't belong in the canon of a wrestling show. It just feels like some interloper going out there and cutting a drunken promo at Fantasy Camp. And I think he did at times a good job and at times not a good job with that. But I was against it in AEW, and I'm 100 times more for it in AEW than in WWE, because it's a much more mainstream product with families and kids and more casual fans. And I don't think casual's the wrong word. They're ardent fans into the product, but they don't care about the behind the scenes stuff. They are not online trying to figure out what people are really like and they just want to really immerse themselves and have a peak fan experience, cheering for good guys they actually like and booing bad guys they don't like, and watching good athleticism and stories being told. AEW is different than that, although AEW, I think, benefits when they lean into that a little bit more. And they did with Kenny and MJF brilliantly. That was a great segment Wednesday. As I talked about, it was Kenny's best AEW promo to date. AEW is doing WWE better than WWE is doing him right now. And so I interject. I don't want to I don't want to sit here and look like I'm complicit in saying Dan Lambert is something to aspire to. I didn't like it much, and I think it's much less apt to work, and it's a bad fit in WWE. And I think, yeah. So anyway, I'll stop there.
Let me use another example then. Chris Jericho, that came up on the fix about how he reinvents himself. Chris Jericho had a thing that when his babyface character, people started turning on his babyface character, he would buy into that and then turn that go away heat into actual heat. So because he would say, oh, I was meant to be annoying, so he had a way to do that. That's what I'm saying. You could take the heat the go away heat that he has with the ardent fan and turn that into something more productive. I don't think that's impossible. That's kind of like,
but they're not searching to do that. Let's just be clear. They're not. What you are saying is so disconnected from the mindset of what allowed this on the air in the first place that I feel it's kind of silly to talk about it. They are not aiming to. They should be. If this was an angle that was entered into in good faith to try to sell tickets and try to improve the fan experience, in a way that was grounded in a conversation behind the scenes and a collaborative effort to tell a good story, and it just was a little bit off, we can have the discussion you're having. It feels silly to have it because that is not the goal of what's going on here. So we're trying to fix a hamburger that's trying to be a pizza. Like, it's just, I mean, it's almost a waste of time to say, how can they fix this? Because if they were interested in doing the good advice you would give them to fix it or get it back on course, they wouldn't have done anything they did the last 8 days. Like, this isn't like we're trying to do something that's not quite working. Can you fix it? They're trying to do something so different that the good advice you will give is completely counter to what they think is brilliant about the hack, counterproductive flailing that they're doing.
Yeah, but that's why I keep going back to the Cody part of it, because I think whether it's just him by himself, I think that part. Because let's put it this way, I think that there were 3 writers involved. I don't know if there is or whatever. Yeah. There were 3 writers involved in that. The CM Punk stuff was Rock's people, writing a pushback on Punk because that was just mean. The second one is the stuff that we're trying to get McAfee across. That might be Emmanuel's people. And then what Cody is Triple H's people, which is actually trying to get the things back on the road.
It's trying to save Cody from being damaged. Cody's trying to. He's not trying to fix the storyline. He's just trying to protect himself from this chaos.
Yeah, but with the work that he did, that's what I'm saying. The door is open to not make things worse. Let's put it in those words. The door's open for them not to make things worse and actually, take it, make chicken salad out of chicken poop. There's opportunity for that, but it's a small door, like you said. If the backstage stuff continues the way it's been, they're not going to get to that point. But we got to see what happens next week, because WrestleMania is next week. Yeah. So we've got 2 more shows, and one of them is like night 1 of WrestleMania anyway. So I'm not so we got technically 1 more show. See what they do on Monday. Yeah.
Cavanti Smalls says the McAfee Punk feud didn't sell any major blocking tickets tonight, especially as airline tickets go up and it's a week out. Plus, they're not wrestling. Mark Biscotti says they just made a first night main event match worth ... nothing. Jeff Pollard says, I'd say it's Vince Russo WCW level booking, but it's not even that good. It's worse because there was an inertia and a momentum and a foundation to what they were doing that didn't require hack, semi-pseudo shoot nonsense. And so it's sadder to watch. Like, it was sad watching WCW in the latter years just flail desperately, but they didn't have a good thing going that they were ruining. They were just they were flailing to become relevant, and they didn't know how to rebuild, to that and have the patience. They didn't have the patience or the wherewithal or the knowledge or the talent that was willing to work, because they had guaranteed contracts, a bunch of people sitting out and not showing up for work. It was awful. They got everybody showing up to work. They got a really good writing team. They got Paul Levesque, who knows his stuff. They got Cody Rhodes, who's a generational, traditional babyface who the fans like, except for the meddling damage that's being done to him. And when they don't, he's going to be a great heel. And we're just sidetracked on this nonsense. So Rye says, this second year in a row, WWE screwed up Mania, Cena's heel turn last year. They need to stop trying to reinvent the wheel for 1 show each year. Make it make sense. Derek Mitchell says wrestling fans who aren't familiar with TKO leadership may not realize who's behind the scenes. R. Emanuel, Mark Shapiro, Nick Khan, in their business practices shape what we see on screen. That's the thing. They fans don't. The vast majority don't. They don't know what they're watching. We're talking about it, and there's some insider reporting going on by me and others that are kind of framing this, but there's stuff we don't know. That's going on here. There's dots we're connecting that are likely true, but no one's on record confirming they're true. But I think we have a pretty good idea what's going on here. But the average fan watching is trying to have it make sense within the context of a show they watch once a week, like The Pit. I mean, if you tune into The Pit and suddenly there's a bunch of references that are confusing to the showrunner changing hands in the offseason, or a script being changed, which was making headlines today, and you don't want that in the show, people just check out. Ben says, Pat is ruining the company. I think this will be the worst WrestleMania.
Well, one thing about that, the hilarious, I put that in quotes, thing is that Pat's just a tool. He's a tool of, in every sense of that word, so to give cover to the people who are ultimately making that decision. Someone put him on there. And the fact that somebody is his agent, I think more than anything that was got to rankle the people in the back is that the one of the people in charge is an agent to someone that they just shoved into the main event.
So I lost you a little bit at the end there. Say that again.
What's got to rankle the wrestlers in the back more than anything is the fact that they just shoved that one of the higher ups, who's also the agent of a talent, shoved that talent into the main event.
Yep, and that's one of my in the cover story of the newsletter. It's one of my lead paragraphs. Is this? There's a conflict of interest. Rich Van and I talked about it on Everything This Week. There's a conflict of on the VIP podcast feed. There's a conflict of interest here where you have our Emmanuel, who has a stake and an interest in Pat McAfee succeeding outside of pro wrestling, and he's using. I mean, it's just there's so many aspects of this that are disrespecting the locker room, and everybody there, not just wrestlers, but the creative team and management, everybody who built what has been a really successful run for WWE. The idea of using this platform to help McAfee get himself over. I mean, it's like Bill Watts and Eric Watts. It's like it's like when there's a dad with power who pushes his son too much. But in this case, it's a friendship and a financial interest in just being a mark for somebody and wanting to see him succeed. Some combination of all of that in different percentages. And they're giving Pat McAfee this platform under disingenuous intent. It's not just because we think Pat's going to help spark WrestleMania, because again, this is excuse making and flailing to try to say we had to do this because you didn't do your job. But it's also we want Pat to be a star, and we want to show his range as an actor and as a character to get him, new opportunities outside of this. Standard Deviation in the chat says Vince Russo sped up a dying company's direction, whereas WWE had just burst into a new boom period. Yeah, I mean that is what makes this such a shame. I will say, as far as Cody goes, he is trying to defend the locker room and the state of WWE when they're doing well, when this stuff isn't happening. He's trying to rebut Pat, but while also not I do think there's a conundrum with Cody and Punk, which is, do we want to legitimize Pat as equal? Are we bringing him to our level if we act like he's bothering us? And you kind of have to, because he's associating with the heel challenger to the world title, headlining one of the nights of WrestleMania. But you also just don't it has to sting to just stand there opposite of Pat if you don't respect him and you vehemently disagree with what he's saying and you understand the politics of it, and to try to improve it, to try to make it work. It's almost imagine going, I think I can make this less awful and actually make it work a little bit, but do you want to? If you're Cody Rhodes or the writers or Paul Levesque, do you want to? And now, Javier, you have McAfee saying you're revealing on air that Cody is tight with Paul Levesque. and that Paul is a booster of Cody behind the scenes, which if the goal is for Cody to be cheered, and you're not super familiar with the breakdown of management behind the scenes, you've now added to the story prematurely that Cody is a corporate suck-up teacher's pet type babyface. And that's something that's kind of been out there, and I don't think it's been good to do it before you have a real timetable to turn him. And now Pat's just basically said, in the crude way that Pat likes to do it, that Cody is... And again, what does that have to do with anything? He won the big matches when he was given an opportunity. He hasn't been given unfair opportunities. In canon, there's nothing that says he's benefited from Paul Levesque being a booster of him. I mean, it's just... I don't know. It's frustrating.
The thing, what I'm thinking, one of the possibilities that's going on is, because you mentioned you mentioned often they're reading what they say on Twitter and stuff like that. I put that all in the same bucket as analytics, and I think that they're looking at okay, because this is where I think the ticket price stuff comes in. We can continue raising the ticket prices. And they're going to be people who are going to, because what we want is not the family. What we want is what Cody mentioned, the guy who goes and buys the replica for however much it costs. I have no idea. I don't even care. They want the person who's paying the ticket to sit in the stage, which is the big thing this year. That's who they're following, because a lot of these CEOs and stuff, they're just presented with the analytics and the numbers and stuff like that. And we've been seeing the ones that really don't understand the business. What they end up doing is one of two things. Either they start chasing the customer that they don't have. We want this demographic. We want, this group. We want this group, instead of targeting the demographic that brought you to the table in the first place. Instead of making it, we need to change this. An example, Amazon is making Mass Effect. It's a video game. Very narrative driven. They have been asking for rewrites because they don't want it targeted to the fans of the video game. They want it targeted to people who are normally not into sci-fi. Why then are you doing that? So you have that. On the other hand, you have like what Disney had been doing a couple of years. They might have changed. It's been a while since I followed Disney's behind the scenes stories. Disney pivoted into moving the same thing, moving families out of the parks, raising prices. So, because what they wanted was the more elite clientele. They wanted to become a destination place for the people who had a lot of money, and they started pricing out, people like me. I used to go every year, with the annual pass, but that just it started going up because they wanted that level of clientele. I think that's what WWE is looking at, is looking at how much can we jack up the price, because we can make a lot of money on that. Problem is that when you lose one of those customers, now you're losing a much bigger percentage of the amount that you're gaining. This is what killed the comic book industry, because the comic book industry during their boom period, they were selling 6 covers for the same issue. So the hardcore fans would buy all 6 covers. That's one issue that you're buying 6 times over, and sometimes rare covers you're paying extra money for. So, but what happened when that customer left? You're losing 6 copies. Instead of, getting, and I think that's the WWE issue. The WWE has been focusing on these small amount because, yes, they're not selling WrestleMania, but even if they were not selling a single ticket, they'll probably still break records, right? Yep. Based on the amount they're selling compared to last year.
The ticket prices are so high. This is going to be one of the biggest weekends in pro wrestling history, ticket revenue-wise, yeah.
And let's not forget the fact that it's being paid to be there, And one thing that I do want to bring up, that the reason that they paid for WrestleMania to be there a second week is because Vegas itself is in trouble. Vegas is having a hard time getting people in. So how does that not compute that you're going to have less people at WrestleMania the following year? That's why you're there. So you need to. So they're trying to eat their cake and have it too. They want the money for Vegas, who's paying to try to draw more people, knowing that they're having issues, knowing that they might not sell the tickets, and then they raise the prices, and then they have problems selling the tickets. And whether the mention of the last week's was them trying to blame Cody for real, if it's a message being sent, as they sometimes had been wont to do, that's saying, hey, it's Cody's fault, and the heels speaking truth, whether it's still a mistake of your own making, and you should have either been fine with not all the tickets selling out and saying that our numbers are not as high, but as it's not, we didn't have as many butts and seats as last year, or be fun, but tout that, hey, this is the most profitable gate.
Mhm.
Choose one or the other. Again, because they're following people who don't know what they're doing are following just what's the number on a spreadsheet instead of understanding, like you said, the business.
There's so many metrics that are beside the point, ephemeral. They're instant and sexy and exciting because you can get that instant feedback, but they're not the most important. They're it's good to have social media engagement, but that should not be the driving force behind the decisions you make. It should be a pleasant side effect of doing things well, but it shouldn't be the thing that motivates you to do something specifically. That engagement on social media is not what sells tickets. It's just a number that you get that says a lot of people are aware of us. And a lot of people are aware of Eric Swalwell today, but that's not a good thing. So, I mean, sometimes a social media view, whatever, a view of a video or whatever, it's like, okay, fine. A lot of people saw it. It got picked up by the algorithm and people follow your product. But how does that help? Is it helping you sell tickets, or is it an eyeball watching something and laughing, shaking its head, groaning, going, oh, that's cute, but it doesn't engage them to participate as a fan with that peak fan experience that I talk about all the time.
And how does Emmanuel defend his decision? Is he says, look how popular Pat McAfee is in ESPN. This is for synergy with ESPN. This is so if it's I'm not going to say it's nothing. It's a bonus because sports fans. You're trying to get sports fans into it. It's a bonus, but then to sell that as this is going to be the driving force for WrestleMania.
Yep. A few other comments and we'll hit on, we'll shift, even if I have more to say, we'll shift to other topics here. Ben says the show was mostly about the sales and tickets because there are so many seats left unfilled. I might not even watch wrestling after WrestleMania. Kane Play Stuff says, a buddy of mine that I've watched every WrestleMania with since 2017 is talking about skipping this year and stopping watching WWE for a while after that promo. Not all buzz is good news. Not all controversy creates cash. A lot of it does. A lot of it doesn't. JC Scooby says, I won't be watching WrestleMania this year either. It's been a long time since I haven't. This is interesting. Malcolm Baker in the chat says, I was at the show. People were laughing, not taking Pat seriously, and they didn't care at all for the celebrity stuff. Very interesting. Malcolm, you're welcome to give us a call, by the way. You can find the link in my report at PWTorch at the top of the page. If you are interested in joining us, you can just be audio only if you don't want to be on camera. We'd love to talk to you about what it was like in the building. Mr. Freshman says, it's really sad to see what's happening with WWE TV. Cody's trying his best, but this shit is horrible. Yes. Now, Derek Mitchell in response is, I've been a fan for over 44 years, so Pat McAfee and TKO would have to do a hell of a lot more to move me over my square to step away from watching wrestling. Ben says, this is sad what WWE's doing with these storylines. I want to see here. And Mr. Freshman says they're coming to Tampa for Backlash, and I was looking forward to taking someone who has never seen them in person, but there's no way I can justify paying money to see this crap. Mr. Freshman says, I turned the show off during that segment, and that's really unfortunate. Standard Deviation says, for me, it's a weird mix of sadness, stunned, and acceptance that this is what they're going to do. Yeah, I mean, I think that's reasonable. William Bontrager says, Standard Deviation, I was appalled. Ben says, I feel like the fans are going to boo Cody because they're tired of the storyline. Like, the intent here, Javier, is to get, if they get credit for one thing, it's understanding that it'd be good to have Cody cheered and Randy booed, and they think Pat McAfee ripping into all the fans' favorites and shooting on the marks in the IWC is going to, I was on the phone with Jerry Jarrett back when he was launching TNA, and he thought, the IWC, what it was back when TNA was going to launch, very different version than now, but still it existed. He just thought they were going to come out in big numbers and support TNA as the new NWA TNA as the replacement for WCW, the anti-WWF product. And he found out how small it was. For the product he was putting out, at least. WWE is marketing to a subset of a subset of a subset with this stuff. It's the world that Pat McAfee lives in, and a lot of people in wrestling. As you talk about, Javier, there are metrics that are not relevant, but are guiding, or they're not pertinent. They're not essential. They're not top tier importance in terms of indicating, if you're doing a good job or not, that are guiding a lot of these bad decisions right now. And we're Pile Driver Pizzas. I feel like stuff like this stuff is confusing even to the ardent fan. Yeah, Javier.
I never got to the point when I was mentioning that thing. I went too long. I forgot my point. Was that the storyline is, when they're targeting the storyline to the online fan who, because it seems like essentially this is a saga. I'm putting myself in their head. It's a saga of of Cody Rhodes, who is led by the god being Triple H, versus Pat McAfee, who's led by so we're watching this behind the scenes. Like, I don't know if you ever saw like the old Hercules movies where you would have like the soldiers and stuff doing stuff, and then they would cut to the gods, and the gods were like playing chess with the actual troops. I remember one of the Hercules movies was like that. I think that's who they're making it for the fan who like. Who these stories are for, that kind of fan, but I don't. But I think they're misreading that kind of fan, because most of that kind of fan just wants today. Might have been fine a couple of years ago, during the Attitude Era, that was what was brought up. That would have been fine then.
Not a couple, 30.
Yeah, underlined. Please don't remind me. Talking on the fix, watching the AEW Flash, it's like been so long. AEW's been around for such a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that when I was that age, and when I was following wrestling back then, I did care about like Triple H punching out HBK punching out a bunch of the backstage stuff and the salacious stuff, that kind of, because it kind of felt like something. But today's fan, I think they just want to engage with the product. Look how over the Bloodline storyline was.
Yep.
Which, by the way, I don't know if people picked up on it. Punk shat on sorry for cursing, on Raw, saying that. Because he said, this isn't cinema, because a lot of people talk the Bloodline story is like cinematic. It's like a cinematic story. And Punk basically took a shot at, this is wrestling, this isn't cinema. So, that's what it felt, what it came across to me anyway. So, but, that's what people want. People want, that's why Cody, when he has a dragon to slay, works. Cody, because I disagree with some of you guys said on the fix. Cody does have a shelf life. But it's you could fight it off as long as he has a quest to go on, and they failed him by not giving him a quest for the following years. What did I say for the last year? What did I say? Cody had no story, because Cody was involved in the Jey Uso story. He was a bit player to set up the fourth member of not Hell in a Cell War Games. It was, he was a player in Drew McIntyre's story. He was a player in Seth Rollins' story. None of the stories were about him. You need to have the story. So you tell the story of him getting the Holy Grail, which is the title. But then after that, once he has it, he has to fight off Mordred and Morgana and all the other people that are coming for the Grail and fight them off. They didn't do that. He was just basically sitting there. And I think that's one of the people that, he loses momentum that way. In that form, he has to have a dragon to fight. He has a prince. He needs to have a prince to rescue. He needs a Grail to recover. They didn't give him to him, and I think that's where they failed him. But because you need to keep, it's kind of like Superman. Superman gets boring if the wrong writers are writing him. Captain America gets boring, when the wrong writers are writing him.
The state of Cody Rhodes is not the state of Cody Rhodes that leads to scattered boos and people making the case because they're excited to see him as a heel, because he'll be a good heel if they go that route. The state of Cody was not inevitable, is what you're saying. And I've been saying that over and over and over for 2 years. Like, the Cody Rhodes deserved better. Cody Rhodes has been the Cody Rhodes, whatever is wrong with Cody, I think is exaggerated. It's overplayed, and it's easily fixable. And then, as you say, give him a quest and let him be Cody and give him good opponents, and don't complicate things by making him a pawn, not a pawn, but a Robin to somebody's Batman over and over again. Cody is one of the top drawing champions in history, and nobody seems to really want to champion that's what he is. The metrics are different. There's not house shows the way that there were. He inherited a hot company, so sometimes you don't give as much credit for that, and there's a hesitancy too, and I get that. But if you look at Cody's success in his peak run and compare it to Cena, if you just had a black outline and didn't say what years was these wrestlers headlined, and you took Cena's best few years and Cody's few years on top, and you just showed it to somebody who doesn't watch pro wrestling and said who's more successful, they'd go, obviously this guy. Who is that? They go, that's Cody. Oh, I thought John Cena's a bigger star. Well, yes and no. I mean, Javier, the numbers of Cody on top would with a black outline for somebody who's just looking at the stats, they'd go, Cody's a bigger star. And you would never get that impression from watching WWE TV, and you'd certainly never get that impression the way they book him. And it's a shame because there is more to get out of him as a babyface, and it's still fixable. And the things that are wrong with him are not his fault. There's quirkiness to him that needs to be reined in and carefully framed. But WWE did that for a while successfully. There wasn't a clicking talk that inevitably was going to, a countdown clock that was going to hit 0, and then you had to turn them. That timeline was not set in stone. It's being accelerated and exaggerated based on bad booking.
It just reminded me of Lost, where it's counting down, but you just have to type in the numbers and get it to reset.
Yeah. There you go. Yep. All right, a couple more chat comments, and we're going to move to other topics, as I said. Twan Max says, last year's Mania build, WWE made themselves look bad through interviews with media. This year, it's being done in storyline and on TV. Yeah. I mean, we follow all of it. If you're watching this, if you're listening to us, you likely are aware of what goes on in the mainstream media, crossover interviews and all that. But if all you are is a WWE TV watcher, you just want to escape for 2-3 hours a week, a couple times a week, settle in on a weekend, more months than not, this is new. This is not something that they experienced in canon last year. David Hager says, Monday and tonight they had to fix this, and instead they doubled down and tripled down. Yep. Indeed. William Bontrager says, we need to chuck this storyline. Kane Playstuf said, I have another friend who doesn't really watch wrestling. He started checking out WWE with Cody's Finish the Story. He enjoyed it. He also likes Pat. He is lost on what they are doing right now. Darrell says, this conversation right now with Wade and Javier is showing when you try to overthink things or try to think you're doing something big, it can be too much. You play to yourself and turn everyone off. Yeah, there's a lot I don't want to give them credit for overthinking. I just think they're not very smart when it comes to wrestling and what works. Padre for Pizza says they'd have to pull a miracle to make this work in any coherent way. The best I'm hoping for is an RKO on Pat through a table, and we never see or hear from him again. That'd be giving him a send off. I don't think it deserves, but I get what Pete's saying. It'd be nice.
What I think is going to happen is pretty much the way I'm going to put it on my predictions. Is I think that The Rock is going to come out at the end, and everyone's going to lose their mind because it's like we're finally going to get The Rock versus Cody. And everybody's going to be like, "Oh, great," and stuff like that, and this is all going to be forgotten by just about everybody, and say, "Oh, what great booking, and we're back." That's probably going to be the casual line on things, and then we'll probably have that backlash match where that would end. After Randy Orton loses the tag match, he'll take out Pat at that moment.
Jericho found out last week, sometimes you're the big star, you get the big pop for the return, and then enough time goes by and the world changes, and suddenly you don't get that big pop. And you don't get that warm embrace. I don't know if Dwayne Johnson's going to get the pop that he's gotten in the past, and how noticeable it will be, how short of that it comes. I mean, I don't think it's inevitable The Rock's music plays and people go apeshit.
I'm not saying they're going to go apeshit for him. They're going to be invested in they're going to be invested in the Cody part of the storyline. That Cody finally get the resolution.
I wasn't really saying it to disagree with you. I mean, I guess I can see where you'd say it. I'm just sort of like observing, like if the top executives are like, oh, all these people who are complaining about, oh, we're hurting Cody, they don't understand the biggest movie star of the last 15 years is going to be part of WWE. Yay. And it's going to fix everything that's wrong. It's like,
yeah, the pop's not going to be for The Rock if they're, it's going to be for the story continuing where we left off. Because, I am interested to some degree on what that thing that the story they're trying to tell that, but it's just that every single step of the way has been so bad.
And I do think what McAfee said about Punk, which is I genuinely never thought we'd see a time where WWE would authorize somebody to say what was said about CM Punk 9 days before they're hoping to sell out a stadium and have a huge successful viewership for ESPN Unlimited. I just can't believe it would ever be authorized to say on TV in canon what he said about CM Punk. I mean, it blows it. Again, that it's not about whether he's right or wrong. Like, we can have that discussion. Maybe we will later in the show. I've intentionally avoided it because, one, there's so much to talk about. I want to kind of stay focused on one thing at a time, see it through. Could grade us how we're doing on that, but I also don't want to get it's like I said about Punk and Reigns. Oh, who scored more points? The story isn't who scored more points. Don't get distracted by that. The question is, should they have been trying to score points in the way that they were against each other, not who edged the other person out on more points. And with Punk, it's like, oh, Pat made some good points. Yes, CM Punk, Phil Brooks is a vulnerable person when it comes to hypocrisy, when it comes to saying he's not thin-skinned and then showing at the end how thin-skinned he is. He is old. He is thin. He is, it has a rep for being injury-prone. Now, he's held up well enough, I think that should dissipate a bit. But to call him, to Punk's gimmick to help, he's going to be around when Roman's not, probably, unless he walks out of the company tomorrow. And they're going to want to draw money with him. Yeah. And to say, in canon, call him out for the Saudi Arabia kind of caving in on that, or whatever, however, you want to frame that.
Apologizing. That was the word
he
used. Because the apology.
Yep. And, is Punk raking in the cash, and could he say no to it? Yes. Is it the responsibility of CM Punk to pay for all the families to go to WrestleMania? Of course not. He's talent. His job is to get a fair cut of money from the profits that the executives make when the cash goes through the corporate bank account. And that's why this is such utter nonsense that he even had to go there, because you got McAfee as a surrogate for executives who made bad decisions and now want to blame others for the consequences of those bad decisions. They're blaming Cody and Punk for this not selling. That's the message that's being sent. That's the motivation for a lot of these comments. So, but they want to be fair. Oh, we're going to let Cody and Punk rebut. Well, they did, but Punk is, to put Punk in a position where he has to explain why he's not out of his own pocket paying the difference on what he believes are inflated ticket prices is ridiculous. That's not a gotcha line. It's not Punk's job to pay his corporate bosses more profit that the fans can't afford. Punk's case stands unaffected by McAfee saying, yeah, but he's keeping his T-shirt money. But I don't think wrestlers in the back are going to be happy. I mean, weren't happy anyway. I mean, Cody's opening word, I think I speak for everyone when I say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't think you belong here. He could have stopped there and walked out of the ring, and that would have been enough. But that is, I think, what people are saying and thinking behind the scenes. But Punk, every wrestler wants to make money on merchandise. And Pat McAfee just called out, it said the quiet part out loud, which is, yeah, they want you to like them, and they want you to buy their merchandise so they get richer. And we charge the most we can possibly charge to get richer. But you don't ever want to introduce that. I mean, Chipotle doesn't put a sign up going, we used to have $5 burritos, and then they were $5.99, and now they're $11.99. And you know why? Because we want to make more money, and we think you'll pay it. You don't put that sign on the door. It's inherently obviously true. Everybody charges what they think every business charges what they think they can, what their value is to their customer base. But you don't talk about it that way. It's crazy that all these agendas are being served in a way that's now, it's not just Punk who's affected by that. It's every babyface trying to sell merch. All right, so Standard Deviation says, what happens if The Rock shows up at the end of night one? Do the fans forget the journey and go home happy? No, they'll go home having seen a compelling segment in a compelling moment that they were there for, but it's not going to affect the emotional investment and the peak experience they had otherwise. WWE, WrestleMania moments are cool, but it is not. WrestleMania should be about the best wrestlers fighting to settle a feud or win championships, and the WrestleMania moment thing should be a side effect, but not a goal. It's too much a goal within canon at this point. But that'd be a WrestleMania moment. Derek Mitchell says WWE is more like, ironically, HBO Entourage, based off R. Emanuel's relationship with his star client, Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, I mean, bring in the facts. The Powder of Pete says the wrestlers have to sabotage. They could make Pat look as bad as possible. Yeah, I don't know. Sandbagging the storyline would be an option, but I do think there's survival mode right now. I mean, I think Punk and Cody in particular are just trying to defend, score some points, not lay down for Pat, not endorse the story, not even help the story, but everything they're saying is just trying to protect themselves, because come July, they've got to sell tickets and get cheered by these fans who are watching them being emasculated by Pat McAfee, who, as Damian Priest pointed out, as others pointed out when Punk did the pipe bomb promo back in the day, has a special set of rules that don't apply to everybody else to try to get himself over.
That actually was one of the things I wrote, was the last pipe bomb that CM Punk has been writing on the coattails of that forever. And even that original pipe bomb was co-opted by the WWE, and this second pipe bomb was co-opted like 5 minutes after he finished. Not even 5 minutes. He was going over the barricade, and Cole was already saying, "Oh well, there's our CM Punk." The pipe bomb, didn't say those words, but that's what he said. Yeah,
no, I know.
And
by the way, in my Wade Keller hotline that night, like after that pump, it's in the archives. The night of the promo, I was like, "There's a lot. This is gonna be a legendary night, but let's not pretend this was a shoot. Here are things Punk could have said that he didn't." So as you think everyone in the back was sweating bullets in a cartoonish way, going, "Oh my God, alive Mike and Punk." Everything was authorized and approved. And I mean, if they're like, "Oh, I wish you hadn't said it that way," I mean, yeah, right. But Punk was smart enough to leave all the things out. In the night of the pipe bomb promo, I did a Wade Keller hotline for VIP members, breaking down why this isn't the legend. It isn't everything that people are going to make it out to be. But it doesn't mean, and that was before Cole said pipe bomb throwing superstar up here. But it was part of the program. This is a less nuanced, less calculated, less mature, less curated and edited version of Mike. OMG, I can't believe I just saw someone on a wrestling show say that stuff. Derek Mitch. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
The only good thing I found of that promo on Monday was his closing line, which is, "I am CM Punk and I approve this message." That was the only line I liked. We're probably not going to talk about it today. I might call in on Monday just to talk about it, because I've got a really weird investment in the story. I don't think people have been really paying attention to some of the stuff where I don't think even the writers know the story that they're telling. But
yeah, let's call in Monday. That'd be fun. And we can add to it whatever they do Monday. Derek Mitchell in a super chat. Thank you, Derek. I know I've gotten all your super chats because normally I do, but we're just trying to stay focused and not get derailed. On Monday, Punk joked about Roman's buck teeth, and tonight McAfee went after Cody's teeth. Nothing wrong with either getting dental work. Maybe they should give Punk their dentist's number. There was a lot of weird insults. Like a politician, all talk, no action. He had a chance to change things, but he got in a room and sat on his stomach and rolled over like the little bitch that he is. He gave fans a middle finger. He said he's a man of action and an agent of change. Everything he says is actually, I actually am. This is all about Punk. When he brought up ticket prices, they were too high, especially when sloppy, fat bag of bones CM Punk is one of the main eventers. I couldn't help but agree with him. He asked why anyone would want to spend their money to watch that WrestleMania. That, by the way, is a receipt from Rock and Gewurz and the top executives in the Dwayne Johnson camp for Punk saying, was a top Hollywood star. That's that's what we're subjected to, is a bunch of famous rich people being petty, having a flame war at the expense of the fan experience.
In isolation, I know that is really bad, Wade, in the whole scheme of things. Yeah. Because of how I feel about Punk. I super enjoyed it. It was the wrong place. It was the wrong. Everything was wrong, but just
my lens is not rooting for one over the other based on the totality of how I feel about them. It is looking through the lens of, does this make any sense if your goal is to give the fans a pleasant peak experience for their money, for their time, for their investment in this world? And the belief that if you do that, you'll in the long run make more money. But my argument, my view of this is, I might have thoughts in my head that I don't share because I don't think they're relevant to the much more important discussion of what are they? This is not. There are people who like CM Punk, and I don't want my hockey announcers to talk about my favorite team and start talking about the players. Maybe aren't great people. I just want to root for my team in the jersey and like the story that I'm given about who they are. I don't want some other person to speak a bunch of truths that make me less enjoy my escape. And that's what we're getting here. We're getting something that you just don't see in sports and canon. Sadler says it's crazy WWE had to stoop to these desperate lengths to get Orton booed for the WrestleMania match. That's not the main goal. It's a side effect. It's a cover story, but that's not why this is happening. But I get your point. Standard Deviation says, adjacent to data-driven desperation, there's also the political opportunity it welcomes for anyone seeking more power behind the scenes. There were, Powder Repeat says there were boos, but they weren't deafening. I think they were hoping for Dom heat. They didn't get that. Not at all. Standard Deviation says, chasing quarterly profits is different from chasing generational loyalty. That's been a point I've been making a lot, in so many words similar to that. I bring up Target and how they're chasing quarterly profits, but turning away decades-long fans of the Target experience for big box shopping and department store shopping. And they're destroying that in order to, for a CEO who's around for a relatively short period of time, wanting to seem like he's successful by eking out profits, they're damaging the brand, the generational loyalty to the brand. That's what WWE's doing here.
I worked for GameStop when they went from private to public.
Yeah.
And the shift that you see is that a private company, you're the customer. In a public company, you're the product.
Yep. It's like the Chipotle CEO last month or the month before saying, referring to their clients or their customers as users. Our users will pay. Our users make more than $200,000 a year per household, more than any other fast casual restaurant, and therefore we can charge what we charge for burritos. Derek Mitchell says, we have to wait and see what direction they go with the established stars in the main event scene and the newer stars. I'm actually looking forward to getting past Mania. Sadler says, not glorifying Vince, but this was my worry back when he would eventually retire. Would WWE be directionless and the blind leading the blind? Old man Vince was awful, but this was a question mark for me. The thing is this feels like they're doing what Vince McMahon would tell them to do at this point if he was yelling at them at midnight about just finishing Raw or SmackDown and going, the CM Punk's a bag of bones and blah, blah, blah. I mean, Pat's rant last week felt like someone took notes during a Vince McMahon rant and turned it into a promo. Cavanti says, I'm looking forward to getting past WrestleMania for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. All right.
The thing for me, though, is that I'm actually more... This one's been a train wreck. I've been perversely liking the CM Punk range. Wow, I blanked out there. And then the Obafemi one is by far the best built one. So I'm not... This one, I've been able to compartmentalize enough where this one's just not totally souring me. Plus, I was also kind of prepared because you also have to keep in mind that you had a lot of injuries that derailed a lot of stories heading into this too. So this should have been a WrestleMania where they should have just gone with a 4-way or a 6-way even for one of the two matches and just call it a wash and forget about that stuff and build towards the next one. Because, you lost Seth Rollins at an inopportune time. You lost Jacob Fatu at an inopportune time. You lost Braun Breaker at an inopportune time. Even down to Rey Mysterio.
Yep. I
You lost him at an opportune time. I know there's been a lot of talk about like, oh, there's all this chaos heading into WrestleMania, but like when you don't know who are your major players you're going to have healthy at the time, I understand why there'd be like a dip. It just feels that some people took advantage of that dip.
Yes. Yep. That's the thing when we talk about oh, it's Paul Levesque has let TKO down, so now it's an opening for the ranting, bitter Vince McMahon, people saying, well, here's our chance to go after Levesque, because there are these factions behind the scenes that may or may not be loyal to Vince or talking to Vince or Rock or, whatever. There's all, but, in that realm was looking for an opening. And it's like, okay, you went to Vegas 2 years in a row, you jacked up ticket prices, you've had a bunch of injuries, and the economy has people on edge. So let's say Paul Levesque didn't do his job, and let's interject ourselves and meddle and make things worse. But at least people are talking about us. Yeah, people know WrestleMania is happening, and people who weren't thinking about WrestleMania are not going to be like, well, now I need to see Pat McAfee get what's coming. That wasn't the crowd response we got tonight. Sean Plitch in the chat says, I didn't get to watch much tonight, but yes, this stuff with Pat is so freaking stupid. Why make a story so freaking convoluted? Indeed. Mr. Smart E1T says, seriously, Wade, WWE is in trouble, all caps. I said it last week. I said in the newsletter, I think it could be a moment we look back on as a turning point. It's also something they could recover from, but they're not going to. This is not helping at all. Yeah, Sean adds, a lot of the show's been built well, in my opinion, but this has really hurt things. I feel like they have just doubled down, and that's just unfortunate. Sadler says there's rumblings in the IWC about WWE eventually turning this into a TKO versus WWE storyline. It'd be weird for the TKO brand to be heel, but McAfee's protection line made me think this could happen. You could have upper management against mid-management as a feud. I do not think that is a peak fan experience, and if they're going that way, they have done so in an incoherent, counterproductive way so far. That would give me no confidence that they could make that work. I think people who want to build a storyline on a pro wrestling show around anything but wrestlers, and the storyline they want to build around has to do with what their jobs are like, off camera, behind the scenes, day to day, week to week, should not go through with it. Because their life might be fascinating to them, but it doesn't make for good TV.
There's evidence that that's what they're going to do on today's show, because Nick Aldis made it very clear that it was higher ups. So they're working at least a manual into the storyline as an actual plot point. Which I think ultimately, I don't think he's going to show up on TV, but I think ultimately that's going to pivot into The Rock.
Yep. 93 Octane 67 says this reeks of desperation. Yep. Let's see. Okay. You guys keep adding chat comments, and it keeps me from moving on, but there's new people joining in as we go here. W1A2D3 says, I find this entire McAfee storyline so off-putting. We suffered decades of Vince booking, making the show such a struggle to watch. Then came 2 years of relief and fun, and now this. Yes, exactly. William talking about my CM Punk hotline back after the pipe bomb promo. He says that hotline was fire. So go look it up in the archives. It's in the Wade Keller hotline. It's all on demand for, we go back a lot further than that, another decade of podcasts and hundreds of retro radio shows when you go VIP. Let's see. Yeah, and Sean just says you can make a storyline, you can make a story interesting, but don't go so over the top. I like detailed stories, but geez, man, talking about bad ticket prices is just dumb. Absolutely. Standard says Standard Deviation, out of the 4 main eventers on the road to WrestleMania, I'm enjoying Punk's work the most.
Perversely, I am too.
Standard Deviation says Punk has underlined a Rock reference in 2 different promos now. Let's see. Interesting here from Conscious K. Welcome. He says, how badly WWE fumbled this storyline with Cody and Randy. It needs to be studied. Oh, it'll be studied. Sean,
one of the lines that Cody said, I'm not sure when it was, that he said a line saying that for those of you who were expecting a mentor versus a student storyline, this is it.
Yep.
Because that's what people were expecting.
Yeah. Sean Plitch adds they should have leaned on why the title is important. Randy going after the title and Cody wanting to keep it. I feel like Cody's been sabotaged in many ways. Absolutely. And he adds this match has been a lot of Mania matches I'm looking forward to, honestly, but that match has been ruined in certain ways. Yeah, Yeah, I mean, this is now Cody and Orton is just a spectacle. It's not, the match itself. It's just there as a backdrop to whatever the spectacle's going to be.
And with Jelly Roll and Cody's Corner, I don't know if that's official or not, but it's going to be. And Pat McAfee there, you're going to get that. You're going to get a bunch of BS. So.
Yep. All right. Closing the discussion on that. I do want to catch up on some super chats here, mostly from Derek Mitchell, the king of super chats. Thank you, Derek, as always. Pat McAfee ran to the Wrath of Wade. That was his first one. Check out last Friday's show if you want to.
I got the reference, so thumbs up. That was my favorite Star Trek movie.
Derek says, LOL, last Wednesday, AW Dynamite post-show. During the AW Dynamite post-show, I sat and listened to almost 20 to 30 minutes of a discussion about Pat McAfee, but Dan Lambert can't be mentioned? You can mention him, but I'm just going to say that was not something to aspire to. As a,
I totally forgot who I was talking to.
Fair enough. All right. So, Tunes to Zoo says John Cena's a way bigger star than Cody. Laughable take. You're not. I'll just say you didn't listen in a discerning way. Tune to Zoo. I did not say that John Cena is not a way bigger star than Cody. I said if you compared the metrics of their time on top, Cena's peak few years compared to Cody's, and you'd had a black outline and put figures next to each of them, an objective person who doesn't know what you're talking about, just looking at the metrics, would say Cody was more successful. And I don't think the average WWE viewer gets the impression that Cody has been as successful as he has been as a centerpiece star, in part because they see it as more of an ensemble with Roman Reigns and other things that have come along during that time. And I get that. But if you're trying to get the job of a wrestling promoter is to make today's star seem bigger than any star that's ever existed. And you can't do that. You can't say Bret Hart's bigger than Hulk Hogan. You don't want to lose credibility if your next generation isn't as big. But Cody, they had the ammo to work with. John Cena, you can't get away from his voice. It's like if you watch TV and there's a Honda commercial, there's John Cena. If there's a promotion for this, there's a side appearance for that. John Cena is a household name in a way Cody is not. Absolutely no denying that. I'm just saying WWE's narrative, Javier, does not portray Cody as the success he is. And Cody had to self-boast on Friday in a way that's sort of out of character for him, in order to counter the nonsense of Pat McAfee's framing of him as some sort of failure who's dragging the business down. If I'm Cody, I'm like, that's now in canon. My character needs to rebut that, and that's what he did. All right. So, what is your take, Javier, on what happened with Sami Zayn tonight and what's going on with Trick Williams and Little Yachty? Sami was out there just going, okay, I hear the boos. I'm not deaf, but I know I've got fans out there, right? I know some of you speak up. Now would be a good time. That was just odd television. Javier, what do you make of it?
Sure, listen, don't move into something that's easy.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry, we should have had a buffer match, a buffer topic.
Yeah. Yeah, this... I wanted to chide you for using the terms shades of gray and saying that I don't want to hear the term great shades of gray. It's either you're either moral or you're amoral. There is no shades of gray.
That's not my stance.
No. I'm just saying using the term shades of gray like at all ever. But
no, Javier, gather your thoughts because you look like you're struggling because you're stressed out over me not giving you a break for an easy topic. I want to emphasize. I feel like I say a lot of things, and people, and oftentimes it doesn't. People hear what they want to hear. I'm not bearing you. I'm just a little bit. My argument is shades of gray means different things to different people, and it gets used so much it's lost its meaning. So, like cliches and like a lot of things, I am asking people. You can talk about what you believe shades of gray to be, but please use different words because people will hear different words, but they will only hear what shades of gray means to them. So if you're trying to make a point that's related to a few years ago when shades of gray started really picking up as a term we'd use, if you want people to hear what you're saying, you can't use that phrase because it means different things to different people. And I think it's misused and misapplied because I am for Shades of Grey in a babyface who has been cast in a way where fans are going to want to cheer him, having conflicts, letting himself down, compromising himself in a way that he questions, having choices that maybe we wouldn't make, but we still like. I'm all for that nuance in the character. What I'm not for is a roster full of people who you get to pick who you cheer or boo, and then you just label that that ambivalence that's a result of the ambiguity of the characters. You just label that as a sophisticated Shades of Grey era of booking. That is a bastardization of what Shades of Grey initially meant, which is there can be heels who have some good qualities, and there can be baby faces who have some things that you question, but they should still ultimately be cast on their journey to be cheered if they're a face and booed if they're a heel, and they should be cast in a way that matches wrestlers who fans want to like or fans want to dislike. But within that framework, yes, there can be a little bit of gray. I don't even think Paul Levesque knows what that like. I haven't heard him use a phrase in a way that shows any sophistication to what it originally meant, and now what it has what that phrase has been used to justify. That was never the intent initially when that phrase was used. All right, I got that out of my system. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm mentioning is that I'm also disagreeing with that original meaning also, because you're either moral or you're amoral. A moral person can lapse. A moral person can make hard decisions, and a moral person may have to cut consequences. Consequences. What Shades of Grey, when Shades of Grey was introduced into the conversation, that became more about moral relativism in terms of like, if I do some really bad stuff, really amoral stuff, but then I also give to charity, then I'm gray. That's kind of what, yeah. So it's not like a balancing system. It's either because in your morality system, either you are, now what the morality system is differs from culture to culture. The person who's trying to follow their morals, even if they're lacking in them, is not an amoral person. An amoral person is the person who says, F this, I don't care, I'm against it. That's what I'm saying. I've never liked from the get-go the mention terms Shades of Grey, because it to use the word you like to use a lot, it just means that the character doesn't have a constitution. Okay. It means that they're acting on the motion, on the feeling of the day, or
they're trying to get a viral moment that has nothing to do with selling tickets or telling a good story.
But we're not on that tangent, because what I was about to say is that this is the story that almost makes me like doubt what I just said, because what it seems like is that they threw up their hands and they just signposted that they don't want to turn Sami fully heel, and just let half of the audience boo him and half of the audience cheer him, and do the same thing for Chuck Williams. So like it really feels like we're not going to push in any direction. Just let people do what they want. However, Sami taking shortcuts, and explaining his way around it, and saying, and trying to justify the shortcuts that he's taking in a roundabout way, is an amoral act. I'm going to keep using those words not to confuse the topic. Those are amoral acts, so he's not an actual moral, he's not being a moral person. Trick, on the other hand, while he is aggravating and annoying right now, hasn't really kind of done that. So, but that's the thing. But they're not. They're just like, oh, boo whoever you want. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Who cares? It's just cheer who you want, as long as you're engaged. We don't care, as long as you're clapping, like seals. That's fine with us. We don't want to really get you invested on who's going to be doing what. So if you're invested in Sami Zayn, yay. If you're invested in Trick, yay. If you're invested in both, cheer them both, boo them both. We don't care. That's the impression I'm getting.
Yeah, Trick Williams is like the worst opponent for Sami in this storyline. If they wanted to tell the story slowly, and they either wanted him to walk up to the line but not cross it, or walk up to the line and then cross it. His walk up to the line is being rejected by fans because of the way they told the story, yes, but I don't think that's the tipping point. The tipping point is Trick Williams is cool, and pro wrestling fans like bombastic, cool characters. And I wrote this in my TV report covering SmackDown tonight. This is my analysis after that segment. Well, that was something. Trick is an example of having a headwind to begin with to get him booed, and then doing nothing to get him booed, and continuing with all the things that led to fans liking him by default in the first place, and the Sami storyline is the victim at this point. So this isn't about telling the Sami story wrong, and there's some chat comments, oh, he's been whining and annoying. They wanted to tell a story of someone having a moral conflict who fans adored. Just think of the Montreal moment. And Sami was trying to tap into that on the promo tonight. You people know me. You know me. I want to give you a great show. I want, so many words. He's like, I'm not like one of those people. I want to give you great matches, great stories. He's sort of trying to break the fourth wall, but in a way where he's not. And the idea was the fans are going to cheer him to not cross that line into being evil, or they're going to cheer him when he finally does, because he's finally fighting fire with fire, and he has not got what he deserves because he's been too much of a stand-up guy. Now, he has been a knowing heel character before, but we're not talking about that now. We're not supposed to be thinking about that now. But the people who we think Sami Zayn really is wants to be world champion, wants to headline WrestleMania, and he has this moral conflict of, do I do what people are telling me I need to do to get to that level? And the fans are supposed to either be against it or be okay with it. But instead, they just like Trick Williams so much, they're not thinking about Sami. And they're focusing on, well, he's kind of whiny, and he's not the shiny new toy Trick is, so we're going to cheer him. And so, Standard Deviation says, I must have missed several Sami segments this year due to the move to 3 hours. As I saw him getting booed last week, and I felt confused. Is he getting rejected by the crowd? I'm not able to follow this. Do you think Sami was trying to get the crowd to cheer him tonight? Is that what you watch? Is that what you saw happening? To slow down the fans booing him at the very least?
I really do think that it's just they decided, or maybe Sami decided, that he doesn't want to go full heel and just, hey, if you're going to boo me because I'm not cool, I'm fine if the kids boo me. I think he's what the feeling I got from that segment compared to the entire, the weeks of work they've done before, it felt like they threw up their hands and say, okay, he's the new John Cena. He's the one that's going to have the people, half of the crowd saying, Sammy's cool, Sami sucks. That's kind of what it felt like. It felt like a complete. Yeah.
I thought he was trying to make the case to fans. You can cheer Trick someday, but not yet. I'm Sami Zayn. Remember who I am. And he's charming. He walks and talks and dresses like a 1970s New York pimp. What's not to like? He told Trick, take off your sunglasses, look me in the eyes. That was a alpha moment that Rhea had with Jade a couple weeks ago, by the way, that I think was key in this feud. He said he can make all the ginger jokes he wants, but Trick, you're going to be facing a main eventer at WrestleMania. I'm going to drag you into deep waters. That's a babyface promo. That is code for you are green, and I am a world-class ring general, and I'm going to bring out a good match in you, but you better be in shape and ready to keep up with me. He said he hasn't shown him anything yet. So we'll find out real quick if you can walk the walk or just talk the talk. That's a babyface promo. That's saying to a character who's got a lot of sizzle, is there some substance underneath that? And I just thought, even before that, he's just like looking at the fans going, fans will have my back no matter what. But they didnme. So
well, because before that he did go on. It's like, because he got that passion promo, and I'm me personally, I'm like, okay, I get what I'm with this side of Sami, because he cut a passion promo basically saying, I realize that there are people who are going to always cheer me, and they're always going to be there, and I'm always going to be there for you. Mm-hmm. Those of you who've jumped off the bandwagon could go F yourselves. That's what I got, where it's them basically saying, okay, we're going to continue with the babyface version of it, and they'll probably stop him whining. I think that's more what it is that they put in the kibosh on the heel turn kind of scenario. And, maybe by the end of it, he's going to be babyface for everybody again. But it feels like the story that had been telling him of pushing him down the heel road, that he's, taking shortcuts and stuff, I have a feeling that they've pulled the plug on that. And for the time being, they're fine with him being half the crowd being, okay, he's boring, we don't like him, yada, yada.
But they didn't get half the crowd. That's the problem. Sammy's trying to get half the crowd back.
Yeah, no. I'm saying they didn't, but I think that's the goal. The goal is to
when I say with
when
I say with Sami trying to get cheered, I don't think he went into that ring thinking I'm going to have 100% cheers and that's a story we're telling. I just don't think he thought it would be 98-2. Yeah. And I think he was like, I mean, he actually said, "My true fans, my ride or die fans, where are you? I know you're in the house." No cheers. Or watching at home. Like he's like, okay, if they're not here, at least I'm going to say they're watching at home too. But my fans will have my back no matter what. I mean, to me, the idea was, I think what you're saying, to some degree, I think there's some room for variation in terms of what their intent is, but we don't want everyone to be on Trick's side yet. And if they're planning a double turn, it takes some of the fun out of it if everybody's cheering Trick and everybody's booing Sami before the match happens. I don't know that's the story they were telling. I think the story they're telling is he's gonna walk up to a line, will he cross it? When he crosses it, are you gonna cheer or boo him? And I think they wanted to be in control of how the fans reacted by having that chapter told a certain way, and the fans are ahead of it because Trick is so charismatic and cool and bombastic and colorful and entertaining. And they haven't done anything to I mean, I think they thought Lil Yachty would be so annoying that people would boo him, and I don't know. But Real Legend said I kind of enjoyed Sami taking out Lil Yachty. What, Javier, about it?
I'm actually liking what Lil Yachty is bringing to it.
Yeah, yep. By the way, in our Shades of Grey discussion, Padre Pete said 50 Shades of Wade. I just give him points for that.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. We're talking about Sami. The thing about the Sami thing is that because when he first started the promo, I was thinking that it was going to be one of those fake, hey, but where are my fans at? You know, and like kind of cut one of those like, you know, I'm going to say I have fans when I really don't. When he got so many boos, but then it was a really impassioned babyface, you know, promo to his, you know, where my right to die is at, like you said, you know, it was really impassioned. So. I mean, if the idea is that it is going to end up being a double turn at WrestleMania, and he's just going to embrace the dark side, then I'm going to be upset at this because his performance did not leave that this would be a not a bait and switch, but like a swerve, because it felt like the promo that he gave was a true babyface promo, not a I have an ulterior motive, I'm wavering kind of thing. Possibly for what you're saying, Wade, where it's like the story people got ahead. But at that point, I will mark this down, drop the score on this one, because then you're just what you did today was specifically just to swerve because people got ahead of you, and I don't like that. Yeah.
But a big but is, did that promo go as planned?
I don't think so.
So I don't think you can mark them down for what they did if they would have done something different had the crowd not been ahead of the story they're telling and they had to audible. And that I'm curious about. Like, was there something about Sami's body language, his inflection, a little bit of what he said that is you're saying in retrospect I'll be critical of, but actually was improvised to try to fix what you're saying they should be doing, but they didn't get the crowd response to be able to tell the story that way?
I mean, the way they could fix it is saying that they could just fix it by saying, you know, oh, well, the reason I ultimately turned heel at WrestleMania, I mean, we've got pretty much only one show left to go, is because my ride or dies weren't there for me on this SmackDown. You could patch that rough ground up a little bit, I guess.
And they do. That's how they do it, yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, this still needs a little bit more development. But it did seem he was kind of like shocked that it was like so many people were like booing him. So
yeah. Sean Plish just says the Sami stuff has been a little weird, but I'm looking forward to the Trick match. I still feel like Sami turns heel. Could be a double turn for sure. Short answer, Javier, do you think Trick should turn babyface, or should they work harder to get him booed and keep him heel for a while longer? Yeah.
Go babyface. I mean, the crowd are so into it. What are you going to do? You're going to have him take out Cody and beat him up and have him partner up with Pat McAfee? I mean,
is there a risk if he officially becomes babyface, they ruin it?
It's always a risk. You know, not to copy Todd there.
Yeah.
But
There is the colloquial way that phrase is normally used as people understand it, and then there's the persnickety way of and I'm of course persnickety at times myself. So
yeah, so I mean, and almost likely, I consider the way things are going. They just need to keep the cool factor and just not have him, do prick stuff. But just to the fact that they now you have Carmelo Hayes. You had the stuff between Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. I know they have history in NXT that the people who lived through that history are probably going to be excited about. I'm interested in actually seeing them more. So that's why I'm not convinced that there will be a double turn, because I think they'll want to keep Trick heel at least so he could have a program with Carmelo.
There you go. A few other comments about Sami. Sean Plitch says, Sami's been a whiny babyface the last few months in my view, even though he's generally a great face. David Hager says, tonight Sami's blaming Cody and Orton makes it like he screwed the guy the fans started to like. Tonight Sami is blaming Cody and Orton. It makes it seem like he screwed the guy the fans started to like. Sadler Version 3 says, Yachty is so annoying to me. The duo would come across better if Trick was an actual heel and get boos. Derek Mitchell says, Sami is such a Charlie Brown character that gets a football pulled away by Lucy. That is, he's leaning into that. Wrestling lingo is extremely vague and changes across time. So it's valuable to avoid vague terms and search the boundaries of what you mean so you can more clearly define it. That is standard deviation underlining what I'm saying, that I think the term shades of gray. It's just like whatever point you're making, use different words so everyone understands. It doesn't have their preconceptions. All right, back to
that plays into something I'm trying to work on. Unfortunately, I haven't had too much time on the whole heel versus babyface, because that's the one term that I think that because often in the fix you have that conversation of, about heel and baby faces, and it sometimes seems like you and Todd are talking two different languages. So yes. and part of that is, I mean, look at what we have a term for white meat babyface. So, which is why I've tried to pivot to saying more who's the antagonist of the story and who's the protagonist, because that's more clean.
Jim Ross introduced that 25 years ago. He talked about the antagonist and protagonist in his online columns. Like he was trying and he wanted to redefine it too. I do not have a simple word for it, like to substitute, but I have not resorted to, that's the wrong framing of it, but I have evolved to saying, I think that a peak fan experience is when you cast a wrestler who the fans have a natural proclivity to like, and you accentuate those traits, and you match them against a wrestler who fans have a natural proclivity to boo, and you accentuate the reasons they don't like them, and you match them against each other. And that is a formula you should do more often than not. Doesn't mean there's a strict definition of what the protagonist or the guy getting cheered is like. There could be a wide array of what that is, but if fans like them and you think you can run with that, build on it and run with it and get away from whatever preconception you have that the term babyface entails. And I do think you can end up, in college, I remember taking argumentation persuasion classes, and they're just like, the most important thing before you have the only way to have a productive discussion with somebody when you're trying to understand each other, the first thing you need is an understanding and an agreement of what terms mean. And if you argue with a different definition of a key term in a discussion, you might agree, but you might argue forever about it, not realizing it. And so, yes, and that's the whole shades of gray thing. And I think you're right to say, let's find different ways to heel babyface. That's why I just got into sentences. And it was in the mailbag on The Fix last week, the VIP show, The Fix with Todd Martin and me. We had a long-time VIP member, and I just attacked him because he hadn't been hearing anything I was saying for years about heel face. And I just, went on a rant just going, what you're saying is what I try so hard every time I talk about this to not be the impression people have at the end. And you could only still have that belief if you tune me out, because I do not believe every babyface should be a Bob Backlund, and that, so anyway, that's.
Well, in pop culture, Walter White in Breaking Bad is the babyface. He's not a good guy. The Fiend was the babyface. He was not a good guy.
Yes, and I will. If I could scratch from the record you bringing up Breaking Bad, it would be ironic because I talked about it endlessly and incessantly and passionately for years. But I almost never now make comparisons between pro wrestling and prestige TV, because I think the genres are so different, and people mistake the peak fan experience watching a prestige TV series with 12 episodes, give or take, every 2 years, that is tightly scripted with top level actors telling a different kind of story, versus a pro wrestling experience, which is week to week storylines, more soap opera like, where the live crowd reacting and cheering what's happening is a huge part of that experience, whether you're in the building or at home. And there are victories that are different than in an underworld setting like Breaking Bad. And so I don't think you can get away with because Walter White was super compelling and you found yourself feeling guilty rooting for him a lot of the time, most of the time, to get past some other villains who maybe were worse, not always. That's a different experience because it's a completely different genre than pro wrestling. You can't put Walter White, and I'm not saying you were saying this, but I'm explaining why I don't even like bringing up prestige TV characters anymore in the true shades of gray in those leads, because it doesn't transfer to pro wrestling, and people think it should, and even with the best writers from all the prestige TV coming over to the wrestling genre and with great actors, you still can pull it off because pro wrestling is so different. It's about the live crowd experience with a fight that settles things, and I think it's gotten pro wrestling off course at times, trying to be that, at times that it just can't.
There's probably bigger conversation
I was
to be had on
that.
this.
I was already.
So I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll table it for now.
Let's talk about it again when we're not 2 hours into a show where we've only covered 2 topics, 1.5 topics. Let's see. Sadler about Sami says, I don't think he's going to be faced much longer. This is surely leading to a double turn at Mania. He'll be roundly booed and Trick will be massively cheered. They will be fighting a headwind if that is not what their ultimate goal is. David Hager says Sami's a heel because he took away the great U.S. title matches we've gotten every Friday since November 25th. Yeah, the ones that Pat McAfee made you feel like a fool for liking. Okay, super chat from Derek. Thank you, Derek. Wade, Sami did say Trick looked like a 1970s pimp. Couldn't they come up with a more clever line than another trope? Yeah, I'm not crazy about that line. I mean, I know Sami's intent was to acknowledge the reality that fans are enjoying Trick dressed up in that way, but it is not inaccurate to say that putting those words to it has a context and a history and has now qualified as a trope. And I think if I were Sami or I were consulting on Sami's promo, I would have, and I thought as he said it, I would have said, kind of like Shades of Grey, is there another way for us to say this? Is there a fresher way for us to say that your bombast and there's other words. I mean, like your bombast and the glitz and the flashiness is appealing to fans. I mean, there's a way to say that and not do the trope. Javier, any thought on that?
Maybe, but it's just going to be a longer. That was also going to go.
Fair enough.
Direction.
We should be in the short answer phase at this time of night. 93 Octane 67 says Sami is a talented performer, very good mic skills. This version is corny. I disagree. I don't think it's crazy for people to think that. Like sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? Totally get why someone would think that. I love this Sami story. I love it. I just wish he wasn't facing Trick, because I think it's incompatible with how fans are feeling about Trick right now. And WWE's doing nothing because they're prioritizing Trick over the story, assuming they're even putting enough thought into it, that much thought into it. I think the Sami story of I can't ever succeed at the level I need, and being kind of mouthy to Cody and getting advice from Randy pre-turn, I think that's really interesting. I think Sami is a super interesting character the last couple months. He's not corny, maybe a little annoying. He's kind of pestering people in a self-centered way about it, but that angst is something we've experienced in real time with him. We've been on a journey with him, and the whole Montreal Roman Reigns bloodline story. I think he has earned the right to express angst about what he should do in order to get to where he wants to go that he hasn't yet, but people like Cody have. Being a little whiny is part of it. I don't think we're supposed to think Sami is handling this with grace, but I think we're supposed to be sympathetic to what he's going through and why some people have bad days, some people have bad stretches of time, and they act out in a way that they look back and go, God, I wish I'd handled that better. I think we're supposed to believe Sami would think that of himself a couple years from now about what he's doing now, but we're not supposed to turn on him.
Yeah, I was just thinking because I think I narrowed down exactly where I kind of got a little bit turned off by the promo part was when, and I think it was because the crowd went so anti Sami at the time, was when he started talking about Orton and Cody, both telling him that he's got to, take the opportunity when it's there. He didn't say that that's not me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or he didn't say that, well, I did that. He brought it up, but didn't really make a choice on one side or the other. Because I think if he chooses, well, yeah, I'm going to do that. I did that, and now I'm successful. Now you're booing me for that. That's kind of where I thought the thing was going to head.
Mm-hmm. But
I think that more than anything is like where I'm kind of like, because I'm with you. I've liked everything they've done to this point. It's just at this point, just maybe it's the crowd that threw it off. Maybe, like you said, they might have audibled. Something's weird there. Let's wait into WrestleMania and probably the fallout from that. Because the other thing is, because I think more than even the Trick pairing, I think that having him have to beat Carmelo, and I think Carmelo got way over than what they experienced, because they're more upset that Carmelo's not in the match than Sami. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I want to rapid fire go through some chats because there's some good stuff on Sami here. But going back to Walter White, Durrell says, I agree with you, Wade. Victor Newman for the soaps was a heel, a bad guy who my grandma and other ladies used to root for, but his character couldn't be used in wrestling. I know you're itching to have a long discussion on this, Javier. We will table it for another show. Sean Plish says, it's been hard to get behind Sami by blaming everyone else. It doesn't make me want to root for him. He lost that match fair and square. Roman probably cheated, though. Standard Deviation says, sounds like Sami's going through his hangman beer drinking phase where he turns his back on all his friends. Derek says, I'm not a fan of the ginger insults, but as a black man, there are so many tropes and stereotypes with blacks in wrestling. It's really incomparable with a few ginger jokes. I get that, and people should respect that and take that into account. That is lived history. David Hager says, Sami has been used by Triple H's booking as a moral compass in backstage segments for 18 months, but the payoff has never come. And now they booked him into a storyline where he's supposed to elevate Trick. Standard Deviation says, if it's a journey of self-doubt that pays off in 12 months, I think he should sink deeper than this and do so in a more relatable way. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's not, if what I'm saying is what they're trying to do, it's not working, and it might not all be Trick. It could be the length of time and the way that they've gone about it. Real Legend says, I'm his ride and die, LOL. Yeah, he's talking to you at home, where you should have gone to the building. He needed you. Goodfella says, he should have beat Mello. He shouldn't have beat Mello, and that's where the heat is coming from, in my opinion. Standard Deviation says, I thought he was covertly trying to get the crowd to boo him, but on the surface remains a babyface. Like he's playing a heel role for one match. So there we go. Okay.
The Punisher, by the way, the Punisher, because comic books are the same thing that they're serialized. The Punisher would be a better example than Walter White, and that is serialized. Okay. He's not a good guy, so that's I mean, it's you're right that it's rule of thumb. Rule of thumb. But you could have a person. It's going to be rare that you're going to have a heel that not heel, a bad guy that you're going to want to follow.
Yep. All right, rapid fire, and then we'll wrap up here. Bayley, Alexa Bliss, just another chapter in promoting the four-way match. Anything stand out here for you?
No, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. We had the vignette with Drew McIntyre saying that Jacob Fatu is a failure as a man, a failure as a father. He cut the promo inside a jail cell. He said, your kids needed a father, and you gave them a walking mug shot. I'll beat you within an inch of your life, and you'll end up behind bars again. He accused Fatu of stealing his title and his WrestleMania main event, and he closed with, I'll be your judge, your jury, and your damn executioner. Now, I would say, to be persnickety, you can't beat someone within an inch of their life and be their executioner. You got to choose. You're going to let him. Is he going to end up in jail, alive, or are you going to kill him?
You beat somebody within an inch of his life and then take that inch.
I guess, but he is saying
To be persnickety.
No, but he said you're going to end up behind bars. And, I guess eventually I'll be your executioner, but just not at WrestleMania. But later I'll kill you. All right. So then Barrett interviewed Fatu. Barrett said Fatu's motivation might not bode well for McIntyre. And then they interviewed him later. So, yeah, what'd you think of and then, my God, if you think, like, our conversation on what happened with Pat McAfee was long today, you didn't watch the beatdown Drew McIntyre gave Jacob Fatu. That just went on and on at ringside. He got
I was playing the Itchy and Scratchy song in my head while that was going on.
Wow.
Yeah, that went on for a bit. Sometimes it's better than some other stuff they can do, but sometimes they get a little bit too indulgent in the forever beatdowns in some feuds, because that's what this feud's been. Has been you already threw somebody off a building, and handcuffing and doing that is. The intriguing part, though, was Solo bringing up who attacked him. So that seems interesting.
There you go.
And then feeding Tama Tonga into him. I'm glad they're doing something with the Tongans finally. So
what's Tama? We got asked this last week. What is Tama Tonga's upside in WWE? As a it's funny because when that was asked, I already had the answer, and I was actually going to text you. You should have.
Yeah, I just forgot because I was at work. Sheamus, like a Sheamus level.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I mean, the only problem is that he's been around already outside of the world, so that's so maybe a little bit lower than that. But that in best case scenario would be Sheamus level.
Yeah. Real Legend says U.S. title level. There we go. Okay, we had Royce Keys, formerly Powerhouse Hobbs, make his debut. I swear, when I saw Royce Keys makes his Keys debuting on SmackDown, I did not click with me right away when I saw the preview, like who that was. I'd forget, if I thought about it, that's his name. But at first glance, I hadn't thought of him in a while. He hasn't really been featured, and the name is so new. I was like, is that an NXT call-up? And I'm like, oh, wait, that's Powerhouse Hobbs. So anyway, he beat poor Humberto Carrillo, who's been shortened, not only losing his last name, but the first half of his first part of his first name. Almost got squashed. They gave him some offense. Barrett called it pure dominance, but Barrett got in some offense. But Keys won in 3 minutes. They showed a video of Keys. I don't know if they just stole the one he did in AEW. It looked very similar to that. So anyway, yeah, what do you think of Royce Keys' portrayal tonight?
It could be, I believe, because I think he made that video himself in AEW. Like how Darby did the feud. So maybe if he owns it, maybe he brought it over.
Yeah, really.
I'm expecting him to beat Angel. I'm no longer called Garza next week, and then beat the tag team together.
All right. So Danhausen made his. He was not officially in the tag match last week.
I know.
Yeah.
He held the tag rope though.
Yeah. He wasn't officially in it, but so anyway, he took on Kit Wilson. Danhausen won. We're playing up the Miz stuff. They did follow up on the referee thing, which I'm glad they did. Miz just ranting about it. So yeah, what'd you think?
Yeah, the only thing I would have liked them to give a plausible explanation that he's off today because he actually, strained a shoulder or something, and actually have it be, because they kind of said like, oh yeah, like he was cheating. I'd rather have been like, oh yeah, he really accidentally sprained his stuff. I'm fine with it, but you're getting to the point now that some people are like, this strange credulity that that the fireworks just happened to go off. So,
obviously somebody is in the back conspired with Danhausen, who has an incentive to add believability to his curses.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's you got three options, whether it's either the curses are real, B, these are just mishaps, and since we can control probability, these are just like unfortunate coincidences, although you can only push that so far, and then you have like this vast conspiracy of 30 people working the lights, working the pyro, and nobody knows. So those are your three options, pretty much.
trackpad stopped working there. Matt Cardona and Trick Williams. We had Williams win in 13 minutes. They had the same finish that we saw earlier with Bailey and Bliss. A distraction on a ring apron leading to a schoolboy for a 3 count. Shame on WWE for that. Although coincidences happen. We learned that with Danhausen. What'd you think of the match? What'd you think of Cardona's role here?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. He's just there as enhancement talent, I guess.
Yeah. Is it respectful to give Cardona 13 minutes? Is he enough of a draw? You just want to give him that much TV time if you're going to fly him in? Or should Trick have one in a shorter amount of time? And did the match drag, or did it make Trick look like, hey, you should beat this schlub quicker?
I think that they're trying to make you think that Cardona is actually, has been someone in the past. Mm-hmm. So we could quibble about a minute here or there, but I'm fine, particularly since it was set up for Sami Zayn doing stuff later on too. So.
Yep. No, I don't have a strong feeling on it, but it went on a while for somebody that I think different people perceive Cardona differently. So I think some fans would be like, "Oh, Trick should beat him sooner," and I was like, "Oh, Cardona, it should be tough to beat him, and there should be cheating." Depending on the journey you've been on with him. So then we had EO and Jade Cargill. Jade winning this one. Test Store's very much going very heavy on. I mean, it basically is, Sky has no chance to win this one. When she loses in a few minutes, we're telling you, it doesn't mean Jade's better than her. She just had a sore arm coming into this. She shouldn't even be wrestling. Like, really laid it on thick. And I actually am glad they did. I mean, sometimes it's like, come on. But you don't want to establish that EO at 100% can't take on Jade and beat her, because I think that's a match you want to revisit. So the story is she bravely stepped up despite probably it being a bad idea given her arm being so sore.
Not only that, I think that Io Sky might be Rhea's next opponent. So
right, yeah.
If Rhea wins or not, maybe she cost her the title, cost her in the match. My concern was they're going to find a way to work the three of them into it, because I agree with you that they've been so heavy-handed in their friendship that it means that this is going to be like, brutal, like cut off. I mean, and the thing is, I'm like, well, Io right now is way too likable a character. Is it Rhea who they're going to be turning?
I don't know. Yeah.
So that was kind of my thing with that. But I think ultimately we're going, because they have there is the storyline that I think Io's never been beaten Rhea. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what they're doing with Jade and Rhea, and that's okay. Like, I mean, we're all just assuming they're going to turn on each other because they're laying it on so thick with their friendship. As I joked with Todd, they just never break them up. Just like, next time you think you know where it's going, guess what? You're not as smart as you think you are. So we'll see. All right, Javier, anything else in your notes you want to bring up before we sign off? By the way, I should let people know I do for VIP members, after I sign off on the post show, I get it produced and sent out, or I get it sent off to the producer. But then I record the Wade Keller hotline for VIP members, and generally VIP members would listen in reverse order. They listen to my straight through 20-25 minute rundown of the show chronologically. If you don't see SmackDown, if you don't have all 3 hours, I watch all 3 hours and I run down the whole show, and then I comment on things I don't even get to here on the post show, some small things, some quips, some observations. I try not to repeat much in terms of big picture analysis. Some you can't avoid, like the McAfee thing. I'll give it my concise view of that. But that goes up for VIP members. So if you don't get to watch these shows, but you want to follow them, and when you listen to the post shows, you're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. You always can read my report if you don't watch the show on the website. But if you'd prefer, as a VIP member, you can listen to the 20-minute recap of the show. I do it for Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, and then go right from that to the post show. And I know a lot of people who are who that's the way they experience this show, is listening to the Wade Keller hotline first. Javier, I have filled time with a late show plug while you looked over your notes, but I don't see you stepping up to the microphone, so you're still looking.
No, I am reading them because they're just a couple quick little lines.
Sure.
This is for you, Wade. Aldis actually said that he had another main event in mind.
Loved it.
The Io Sky. So that was cool. I mean, granted, that just means like, why didn't you have it announced? But whatever. I like the line that I think it was Trick that said that it was, I washed my hands with mouthwash. Did you catch Danhausen's address? They gave his address.
Yes, it was next door neighbors to the Munsters.
Yep.
Yep.
And I like the fact that they used it's 1313, so they used an odd number, so it's literally next door.
I was gonna say that'd be a little persnickety of me to say it, but I was gonna say it. Not persnickety, just
yeah. So
I thought the same thing. He doesn't live across the street. He lives next door.
Yep. I do get a kick out of PWTorch calling Danhausen matches, and the last thing was, I almost want them to use Jelly Roll in this, kind of like they've been using Danhausen, make him a permanent fixture, and just randomly show up in the middle of feuds to give the babyface a pep talk. just like, hey, just walk up to Rhea and give her a pep talk, and then because he's so good at that. So
yes, yep. Awesome. All right. Thanks, chat, as always, for your contributions to the show. It's been a blast. Thank you, Javier. I figured we'd probably go long on the last real SmackDown before Mania. Next week's going to be more of a mini Mania pre-show. I don't know, at 3 hours, maybe they'll do some angles or go home promo, but there'll be some video packages and Andre Battle Royal and stuff. So, our last probably full-fledged hype for SmackDown. Thank you for bringing your analysis. Glad you were able to make it work this week.
Thank you for having me. I'll try to make it Monday if it's possible. But
yep.
I'll try, because I do want to talk about the Punk Reigns thing, because I have a lot to say.
Yes, and I'm curious how they follow up, and if Punk is allowed to issue a receipt, and I'll keep asking around and try to get insight onto how people feel about all this. Don't forget, you can get a 7-day free trial of the VIP podcasts through Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/PWTorchVIP. You can get 7 days of unlocking our VIP shows to see what it's like to have the commercial-free versions of this show, along with VIP exclusive shows. And that also is compatible with Spotify then. So if you're on the Spotify ecosystem, you can have a nice streamlined listening experience and get all our shows. You also can get a full VIP membership, which is compatible with the Apple Podcast app at pwtorch.com/govip. Super. Don't let the membership things scare you away, like you have to enter a password or go to advanced settings. You don't have to do any of that with our sign-up process. It just authorizes you with an email. You click on it on your iPhone when you get the email, and you're logged in. Now you can customize that feed from there on our VIP RSS feed page to have multiple feeds for different groups of shows or individual shows. So depending on how many podcasts you want to listen to, and if you want to isolate them in a separate feed so they don't get pushed down the listing, we have that. It's a really slick system, nicely set up. And we have a really nice mobile page that pwtorchvip.com that's set up for streamlined listings. You can create a homepage button that takes you right to our VIP podcast listing and stream shows if you prefer to do it that way. I know I do a variety with my podcast and YouTube viewing and listening. Sometimes I stream, sometimes I download through apps. So we give you all those options. Check it out. Check out this week's Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter with my cover story on Pat McAfee and Greg Park's feature column on Chris Jericho back in AEW. And we'll talk to you Sunday night. If you're a VIP member, you'll hear the post AEW Dynasty Roundtable. Got a lot of great articles up on pwtorch.com today. Sean Radican with an exclusive interview with Vampiro. We've got coverage of the Tony Khan media Q&A, which again is on the PW Torch Dailycast feed right now. So check that out. We've got my report and Eric Corbridge's report on SmackDown. Sean Radican interviewed Don Callis today. We've got exclusive excerpts of that, and then VIP members can hear that interview with your VIP membership. We also have an AEW Dynasty pay-per-view primer up, the AEW Feud Tracker with Zach Barber. We missed him in the chat lately, along with the Kurt Cadet's Raw Feud Tracker, assessing all the feuds heading into WrestleMania on the Raw brand, TNA Impact Hits and Misses, the TNA Impact TV Report, AEW Dynamite Hits and Misses, Greg Parks' editorial on the United Empire coming to Ospreay's aid and his take on that. Got 2 reports on the NXT TV show, Kelly Wells and David Miller with their reports on that. And we have our 5 years ago flashbacks on AEW Dynamite to take you back in time to what was going on 5 years ago at this time. The Raw Hits and Misses. Did Punk's rebuttal of McAfee land? Is iShow Speed's outsider celebrity role working? And was a contract signing segment with Oba and Brock effective? Those questions and more covered. So much cool content. That's just me scrolling through the first a couple pages on our website. Great content from really great content from great writers at our website. Hope you're checking it out on a regular basis. On that note, thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.